Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, theories, and more.
We are covering chapters 28 through 34 of Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros today. But before we begin this deep dive, please listen closely to our usual content warning. Most importantly, we have spoilers for all of Iron Flame. We may be focusing on chapters 28 through 34 today, but we are bringing the whole book into the conversation to really get the most out of this deep dive. Everything from Iron Flame, Fourth Wing, and anything else that Rebecca Yarros has said, it's all on the table.
So if you don't know that Riddick, of all people, Riddick actually has the info that saved Navarre, then pause, go finish the book, and then come back to listen. We will be here when you're done.
And of course, this podcast is rated R. We, a Fantasy Fangirls, are adults who say adult things with adult words about an adult book.
I will only be referring to Jack fucking Barlow as his full name of Jack fucking Barlow, and we talk about him far more than we'd like to in this episode. So please be mindful of little listening ears.
And today we have a special announcement. We cannot believe it, but after 3 months, this podcast has just hit 1 million listens. Holy moly, Nicole. We are so excited to celebrate these 1 million listens with the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and just thanking our community for being so incredible and making this happen in 3 months. Can't believe it. I just can't believe it.
Do you remember when the first week we were like, if we get 20 downloads, we'll be so excited. And here we are. And to thank you, incredible, amazing, stunning listeners, Lexi and I are hosting a giveaway to win the ultimate Fantasy Fangirls gift box. Here is how you enter. In the link in the show notes or in the link in the caption on YouTube, you'll find the link to the giveaway where you can choose any of the actions that are listed on that link. There's many. You can do as many as you want or as few as you want. But for each action item that you do, it earns you a certain number of entries. The more entries you have, the more higher your chances are of winning. The giveaway ends this Wednesday, December 20th, and the winner will be announced on our Fantasy Fangirls TikTok and Instagram on Thursday. Thank you all so much for making this possible. We love you. We love you. We love you.
Last thing before we jump into our Iron Flame episode 5.
If you love Fantasy Fangirls and you want to support us in making this dream our livelihood, and you want even more content, more community connection, discounts on merch, early access to episodes, and more, please check out our Patreon. We have 2 membership tiers, Cadets and Dragon Riders, and our Patreon community is so incredible. We just had our very first trivia night, which was freaking awesome. I cannot wait to do that again.
Me too. That was so much fun. We had prizes. It was really competitive, all in our Discord. We have so much going on in our Discord. And if you want to join the Patreon party, the link is in the show notes or YouTube captions, depending how you're watching. And again, really and truly, thank you so much for helping us bring these episodes to you.
And now, Lexi, it is time to break into the archives.
Let's begin this episode deep dive with Battle Brief, aka Nicole's summary of what happens in chapters 28 through 34 of Iron Flame. Take it away, Nicole.
Chapter 28, Midnight Rendezvous, anyone? Xaden and Violet meet up with a drift of 7 griffins and their flyers for a weapon supplies drop-off. And hey, we know one of them. It's our girl Serena from Resin. But she's standing next to someone who's beautiful, younger, maybe her cousin, maybe a sibling, we don't know. And it looks like the little Serena lookalike has the hots for Xaden. Also, she a bitch. Xaden and the flyers exchange some pleasantries, kind of, and Xaden admits if it comes down to saving Navarians versus saving poor millions, he will choose Navarians. Apparently, this is a new development. But we also learned that a Peromish Viscount will happily give him a luminary, but Xaden, for reasons, says no way. But Violet has a suspicion that this is about her. Serena takes the daggers and says to the younger flyer, "Let's go, Catriona." Oh shit. That's Xaden's ex. Chapter 29. Heading back to Samara, Violet confronts Xaden about Kat being his ex. But before they delve too far into their sexual history, Violet also asks about Takaris. We learn that this dude wants to see Violet wield lightning, and in return, he'll give him the luminary. That's it. And Violet is like, what's the big deal? But Xaden admits that Takaris is known for collecting things, so Corden is not up for discussion. He switches back the topic of conversation to that earlier option of number 2, but Violet has a lot to share with her shadow daddy. Coming back to Bezgaeth, Violet is deliciously sore from what happened with Xaden. Looks like option number 2 did get to happen. Walking to her room before turning herself in to be court-martialed, she runs into Varish. And as usual, this guy is an ass. His henchmen check her bag, but just before they ask ask her to strip Xaden's flight jacket off, she locks eyes with Ree, who's watching her through her cracked open door and gives her a meaningful look and looks at the alloy dagger that Xaden gave to her. Kaori swoops into the rescue for our girl Violet, but Varish still gets his little rat hands on Xaden's jacket and checks every pocket. Huh. Nothing. But Professor Kaori has another trick up his sleeve. He's already talked to Panchek, and Violet is cleared of all charges. Glad that's over. Varish and his posse leave, and Rhiannon calls her friend into her room. Our girls summon the dagger through the walls.
Huzzah! Huzzah! Huzzah!
But enough of Ree being a badass. Her friends are demanding answers, and Violet caves to tell them. The dagger is for killing Venom. Chapter 30. Violet tells her friends everything. Well, maybe not about Horatia and Brennan, but everything else. And they immediately jump into problem-solving mode. Violet is shocked that they skipped over that whole part where they're supposed to be mad at her and shun her out of the group. No, accepting. Wow, what a concept. As they plan their next actions, Violet laments that they don't have a first-hand account from the first 6. But Riddick, fucking Riddick, has the info they need. Warwick and Lyra's journals are in the sub-level vault in the archives, and he learned this from a classified ledger in Mama Sorrengail's office that he read during squad battle last year. Well, shit! Violet is stunned, and honestly, us too. But they make a plan to ask Jacinia if they can sneak in ASAP. Montage! 4 weeks or so go by, and for one reason or another, mostly because Violet is stuck in the woods, our girl is unable to see her shadow daddy. But now it's threshing, and both of our friends, Auric and Sloane, have made it. Yay! And as our favorite second years are watching the dragons and their new bondeds enter the field, they receive a message from Jacinia. She's found the secret vault. Violet goes to her watch duty at the academic tower while Riddick goes to meet up with Jacinia and get the DL. But just as Violet is relieving Aya from her duties, 4 assassin infantry soldiers enter and begin attacking. Aya does not make it. R.I.P. to my girl! But just as Violet is thrown over the edge and holding on for dear life, a knife is shoved through the spine of the last living, money-hungry infantry soldier. Chapter 31, Jack fucking Barlow to the rescue? Jack fucking Barlow pulls Violet up and saves her life. Weird does not even begin to cover this moment. But Jack fucking Barlow leaves, and Riddick comes in and sits with our girl as the adrenaline passes. But he tells her the bad news. Jacinia found the vault, but it's the royal one, and they need someone with King Tauri's bloodline to access it. Sucks. Bummer, man. They had a good run. Oh, darn. But wait, now it's Violet's turn to drop some knowledge because good thing they have a prince who hates his father. Chapter 32. In Violet's room the next Saturday, Violet just told Xaden everything about the new members of the We Know About Venom crew, and he's pissed. Like, I need to close my eyes and count to 20. Pissed. But he looks ahead at the night's adventure, breaking into the archives. And together, him and Violet agree that they're doing this plan. The rest of the crew joins in, including, what am I doing here, Auric? But homeboy is pissed when he sees Xaden, leading us to learn that Xaden killed the prince who mysteriously died in the Writer's Quadrant his first year. Well, did not see that coming. 3 hours later, our crew is well versed on the plan and the heist has begun. Our crew unfortunately has to split up so they don't draw attention. So Imogen, Xaden, Auric, and Violet venture into the depths of the archives and they make it to the royal warded room, and Auric pulls Violet in with him, much to Xaden's dismay. Violet and Auric search, and yes, we are going to break this moment down beat by beat. But just as they're needing to leave, they find the journals. Of course, they're in the middle of a kingly table, perfect for showing off. Woof, King Tari. Auric retrieves them, absolutely obliterating his hands. Looks like King Tari can only access those wards. And our crew begins to sprint out of the archives, but the doors are closing. Violet makes it out, but Auric doesn't appear to be so lucky. Chapter 34. Nope. Never mind, a second prince is not dying today. Xaden pulls Auric through the archives. Holy shit, our team all made it. An elated Xaden and Violet have a happy moment, rare for these two, in a dark alcove, not rare for these two. Xaden takes one of the books from Violet, leaving for Horatia to drop it off with Brennan. And just as a parched Violet is basically skipping through the halls, she runs into Nolan. Oh, it's good guy Nolan. Sure, he's up to wholesome things. Nope. Nolan gives our girl some lemonade, a familiar familiar tasting lemonade. And suddenly Violet's connection to Taryn fades and Varish steps into view. Dun dun dun!
Oh man, when I read that part, like it was in the middle of the night and it's like, there is no way I can stop reading at this point.
Oh my God, no.
As always, thank you so much for that lovely recap there, Nicole. And now it's time for us to don our Signet Power and discuss key insights, reflections, foreshadowing, and of course, all of our favorites, theories.
We have to begin with this middle of the night rendezvous. As I was reading this for our deep dive, I was wondering, where is this rendezvous point, especially since, quote, the edge of the nearest ridgeline glows with the lights of a Peromish village, but I'm not sure which one. Looking at the map, I whipped out my map for this one, y'all, and I looked for places around Samara that were close enough to have a middle of the night rendezvous. And two options came up. Shakir, which is to the north, and Anka, which is to the east, which is also super close to Zolia. Now remember, last episode we learned that Zolia has been overtaken by Venin and has fallen to blue fire dragons, aka wyverns. So if you're looking on YouTube, you can see that Anka is right near Zolia. Because Taryn says that, quote, they're easily within a wyvern's flight from Zolia, we can guess that they are in Anka, not Shakir.
I just have to say, Nicole, I am so proud of your archives level investigation here. That was some good stuff.
I'll tell you this, it is not my first geographical deep dive of this episode. It is one of 3. I do wonder because Taryn says he is more worried about Serena than he is about Dane Atos. What the fuck? Why?
But before I dive into that, I first have to say I am very proud of Taryn for sticking to his promise about giving Violet choice in matters, even if he doesn't agree. It's such a dad move, right? Where it's like, I need to let you make your own decisions, but I don't like it. But to your point, Taryn, I think that he's a prime example of these deep prejudices between Navarre and Poromil, or for him more specifically, Griffins and Griffin Flyers and Dragons and Dragon Riders. They have an alliance, but it is strained. And this is just a really good example of that. He doesn't trust the Flyers. And while he certainly doesn't trust Dane, it goes to show just how on edge this alliance is. It's kind of like Dane is the devil that they know. The Flyers, they don't know as much about, maybe. Oh, Taryn probably knows a lot more than Violet. But just, you know, they kind of know Dane. They know how to avoid him. And the Flyers are a little bit more unpredictable. That's my take on it.
I assumed when I first read this that he was just talking about Serena, but I think he's talking about all the Griffin Flyers in this drift, which we only know, technically we only know one of them. However, 2 were at Resson, which, speaking of which, does Violet not know that everyone of those Griffin Flyers except for Kat and Serena died in Resson? Because Violet notices that the guy standing next to Serena is new and wonders if the man she'd been with at the lake right outside of Athbean in Fourth Wing was killed during the attack. Did Xaden and crew just not clue her in that they are basically one of the only survivors that walked out of that attack?
I guess so. We learned this information about Serena and her sister surviving from Xaden's POV at the end of Fourth Wing. It does make sense that Violet wouldn't know this. She was not in the room when he learned this information. And I'm assuming she was just a little preoccupied with the whole Venin attack and her brother being alive and Andarna and all of her other own troubles to learn what happened to the Flyers at Resson. Guess that was one of the questions she did not ask Xaden.
Well, speaking of in Xaden's POV at the end of Fourth Wing, we get Bodhi saying, quote, Serena is alive if that's what you're asking. So is her sister, but the rest, he shakes his head. So was Kat there? But I think that Violet would have been aware of a girl staring at Xaden like she is right now, because I don't think that would have changed much in a few months. But like, was Violet just a little too kerfuffled to notice that a really hot Griffin Flyer was looking at Xaden? Which is fair, to be honest. Her whole world flipped upside down, so I kind of get it. But
yeah, I'm going to guess that this was an Iron Flame edition, and we need to overlook that scene and wherever Serena's sister was in there, because technically, yes, Kat was definitely there at Resson, but you would think that when Xaden and Violet were having their cozy session, and that's when Serena kind of came in and walked in on them there, you would think that Kat would have something to say, there would be some kind of reaction, and I think that this is just one of those things where it's like, oh, gotta plug in a character here in Iron Flame, and we just gotta look past that other part there.
I think you're super right. Now, there was that one Griffin Flyer, because Liam is looking at the 7 griffins flying in, and then he goes, all 7, ... 6 of them. So maybe Kat did yeet on out of there. And because, she is younger, she is still in school, so maybe they were like, you're not going into this battle, you're instead going to go tell everyone. This is kind of what we speculated in that episode. I don't know, a lot of people were also like, no, one of the griffins just died.
That's what I was just gonna say. You and I had speculated, well, maybe like one of the griffin flyers like left to go be a messenger or something, and everyone else is like, no, Fantasy Fangirls, they died. It's like, oh, well then.
I love how this book has made us very dark thinkers when it comes to fates of characters, and that just did not even cross our mind. However, there was one line that really stood out to me in this Kat exchange. In Violet's inner monologue, she says, quote, she, meaning Kat, is the kind of beautiful that would normally lead to positions in a king's court or on the stages in the theaters of Chaldeer. So there is an incredibly popular theory that Kat is going to end this Empyrean series in a royalty position, mainly when she finds out that Auric is the Prince of Chaldeer and not just Auric Grey Castle, 2nd Squad, Flame Section, 4th Wing. So I love this because that little line, it's so Rebecca Yarros to just like drop a half a sentence about a character's fate. And again, she's the kind of beautiful that would normally lead to positions in the king's court. Am I oddly shipping Auric and Kat? I think I might be. I think I am.
I absolutely agree with you about some foreshadowing about her and Auric, although I am personally shipping her and Dane because I think that they deserve each other with their redemption arcs and all of that. But she is absolutely after a crown. I wonder if she actually wouldn't be after Auric's crown, at least at first, because she was after Xaden and Orisha because Tyrandor is sympathetic with poor Emil. She wants Tyrandor. She does not have warm and soft feelings towards Navarre or Chaldeer or anything that has to do with Auric's reign. That is her enemy, so to speak. Well, not by the end of this book, but you all know what I mean here. She would have to really go through her own journey to, I guess you could say, want that. Now, of course, she could absolutely want it and do her own thing with it. For instance, she could come in and need to do some serious redecorating. But I could definitely see that happening. But I would be very curious about her desire for Navarre's crown versus the Tyrandor crown, because Tyrandor is what has that closer tied to poor Emil. Now, of course, I think that how royalty is set up in this world, it is absolutely going to change in the course of our story here. And there's going to be more of a different type of society and structure by the end of this, but you gotta wonder.
Honestly, I'm here for it. I'm so for here coming in with her clipboard and saying, I want that out, I want that photo and all of this stuff. I'm here for redecorating Kat. I said this in a past episode. The more I reread this book, I hated Kat on first read of this book. I was like, this girl is the devil reincarnate. And now each and every single time I reread, I'm like, I think I like her a little more. So I'm kind of here for Kat having like even more so of a redemption arc. I think she gets a mini one in this. Before we get into how we like Kat, let's talk about how she sucks. I love that Xaden looks at Kat and says, quote, I thought we were on the same side, but I won't hesitate if it happens again. Basically saying, if you guys attack again, I'll fucking kill you. And I love that he just does not even have that second thought when it comes to his ex. This is some ex's energy.
It really showcases his ruthless nature. Xaden has no problem killing people, friends. Like, we have to remember that he is indeed a morally gray character every now and then, because he's not with Violet, and then we see him when he's around other people, and he's such an asshole to her friends. He's this ruthless revolution leader with these Griffin flyers. I also really like how we get insight here into how a Griffin almost took Xaden Ryerson down back in Samara. He wasn't bested. He hesitated because he didn't want to hurt an ally, because some of us were like, wait, how did a Griffin like almost get Xaden? It's like, no, it didn't actually almost get him because he was unmatched. It was just he hesitated. And this exchange between Xaden and Serena's drift, it answers another question we had coming out of Fourth Wing. What's up with Xaden and co supplying the Griffin flyers with weapons, and then the Griffin flyers just go and attack the outposts? We were wondering, like, is Xaden part of the strategy, or kind of like how did that whole dynamic work? And we learn here that no, this is not a Xaden approved tactic. He is absolutely against these attacks because when the alloy infused weapons are stolen, the Navarrian wards weaken. And remember, the weapons these Griffin flyers are after are what power the wards, in addition to being the only thing besides Violet that can kill the venom. But Serena, she can't be sorry that a fellow drift attacked. These two allies, they're always looking out first for their own people's best interests. And and honestly, nobody can fault her or Xaden for choosing their own sides.
Well, and something I just thought of, you mentioned like Xaden hesitated. When Kat and Violet face off on the mat, Imogen warns Violet, do not hesitate, commit to your moves, because she knows that like she will go in with all that she has. She, meaning Kat, will go in with all that she has because Xaden trained her. Xaden is not someone who hesitates on the battlefield, in sparring, in anything. And so that was just a fun little connection between how Xaden taught her and how he made that I'm not even going to call it a mistake. He had a moment of sympathy and like human emotion and then almost lost an arm for it. That'll teach him. When do you think, though, that Xaden started sympathizing as Navarian? Kat is surprised when she hears Xaden say our wards. We can assume that when they were betrothed and fucking on a regular basis, he was way less excited about being Navarian. Also, his dad was leading a whole rebellion, so that probably didn't, play a lot into it either. But when did he start changing over to our wards? Was it when he got with Violet? Maybe because it cured some of his anger that he had with Lilith and other Navarian leadership for, everything that they did.
Yes, I definitely agree that Violet is the catalyst here. Xaden is more loyal to Violet than anyone else, any region, any society. That includes Orisha, Tyrandor, the Revolution, Poor Meal. Nothing else ultimately matters except Violet. He has been very, very clear about that. Violet is currently deep in researching wards, and she identifies them as their wards, our wards, Navarian wards. And because Vi thinks of them as our wards, so does Xaden, because it just signifies how close they are, how much of a team and partnership they are. He cares more about her than anyone or anything else, and therefore, if she says our wards, they're his wards too.
Speaking of Xaden winning back some points, because he's delicious and perfect. When they are splitting up the meeting, Xaden is like, Garrick's going to meet you at the next location. But Xaden says to Violet in their mind-to-mind speak, he shares with her, it's going to be near Athbean. I didn't want to hide it from you. I just didn't want her, her meaning Serena's fellow posse to know. And it's just like, good job, my guy. Good job telling your girlfriend, or at least they don't think they're in a relationship, telling your girlfriend that is what's going down and, like opening up that line of communication. Now, here's what I will say, looking at my geography again. Athene is, not way the fuck further, but it's, a distance farther away than it is to Anka. So I do wonder, Garrick is definitely getting the shit end of this stick because he has to go a lot further to do these drop-offs with Griffins. So that was just a little fun tidbit I found.
Back to their communication, I just gotta say, I am so proud of Xaden for his proactive communication skills in this moment, just like you were saying. Their honest conversations and doing their best to listen and understand each other, it's really starting to pay off, especially as we get into the second half of this book. And I'm so proud of Violet and Xaden, at least in this moment. I also really love this budding professional, I guess is the right way to say it, professional relationship between Serena and Violet. There's a certain respect for the other. And Serena, I love that she doesn't attach herself to Kat's beef with Violet. She and Violet have their own relationship where she's, saying that your dragon's still the scariest motherfucker I've ever seen. And Violet's like, I like you. Please don't die. And it's just like, they kind of smile at each other and they have a good professional working relationship. And I really love that.
I do think that if you and I were in this position, if I was in a Kat position and I was being a raging bitch, you would 100% be Serena. You would be like, Nicole, you would call me out.
Oh, we would have a very serious conversation on the way home where it's like, okay, we got to learn some manners here, even if we don't like the other person. I'm all for hating exes. You know what? Let's just jump right on in here into Kat just being Kat.
Kat just being Kat. So first off, the second we heard that her name was Kat, I was like, motherfucker, this is the Catriona that Bodhi mentioned. Quick side note about Catriona. We do know that there's two different ways of pronouncing it. There's the American way, traditional American way, that is Catriona. And then there's the more UK Irish way of Katrina. We're going to continue saying Catriona just because that is how the audiobook says it. And we do tend to use the audiobook pronunciations just for consistency for our listeners. Now, when we learned that her name is Kat and then eventually learned that her name is Catriona, I started fucking laughing my ass off because in the lead up to Iron Flame, we had a TikTok go fairly viral about Xaden and a Griffin Flyer, and it was me replying to a comment from Little Miss Sunshine about a Griffin Flyer being the love triangle in Iron Flame. Now, while this was not entirely accurate, there was assumptions that it was Serena instead of her sister that Bodhi mentioned. By the way, I also choose to believe that Bodhi says her sister because Bodhi hates Kat so much that he literally will not even speak her name out loud. Like, that's just my headcanon there. But it was so fun seeing this play out because on that video, people on the internet were angry that we even suggested that there might be a love triangle from this reply to comment. But LOL, that was back when we thought that those were trolling comments on the internet. So
we are not saying that there is or will be a love triangle between Xaden, Kat, and Violet. Rebecca has been very clear that she does not like love triangles, and the throne scene's whole purpose, well, not whole purpose because, you know, there's other perks to it too. The whole purpose of it was to squash any speculation or concern that there will be a love triangle between these three. Kat is Xaden's ex, and she stays that way. So just wanted to really nail that home there. There's so much to discuss about Kat and her over-the-top character, why she is the way she is, her role in Violet's arc. We are going to save it because she is so prevalent in part 2 of our story. We were pretty harsh about Kat in our Iron Flames initial reactions episode, and while I stand by that she was definitely too much in our faces at times and she could have dialed it back 10, 15%, like we were saying a little while ago, she's growing on both of us here. You know, or rather, I should say I better understand her character's purpose to the greater story. I don't have just one big question mark next to her anymore. Like, I feel like I can actually understand her character and see where she's coming from, which is so important to seeing her come up on the page the way that she does. I'm really excited to go into a character analysis of her, but again, we will save that for a later episode.
In that character analysis, I can't wait to speculate where she's going to go in the rest of our series. Like, I have a good feeling about Kat, and I can't believe I'm saying those words. But enough about Kat, because we will be covering her a lot more in part 2. Let's talk about another person who we will be covering more in part 2, but he gets mentioned a lot in this scene, and that is Viscount Takaris. I have a question for you, Lex. Do you think that he really does just want to see Violet wield because he is a collector? Because I have questions about his motives here.
No. No is my answer. He knows that Violet's a weapon against Venin, and he wants her as part of his defense. We get confirmation on that later on. He also sets Violet up to see if she can take down a Venin, like almost like he's testing her. I haven't done my thorough reread deep dive yet of that part there, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I don't think he just wants her as part of a collection. She is absolutely a keys. She could be very central to his defense and protecting his people and those others in Poromil.
I agree with you completely, by the way. Something I've also seen questioned around Viscount Takaris is, does he have some kind of in with the Venin since they are also hunting her? And he is, I wouldn't say hunting by any means, but in Viscount Takaris' way, he kind of is. I don't think so, considering he captures Venin, and I don't think he'd have an in with people who he just like locks up in a box. So I don't think that's the case, but I have the right to change my mind. Xaden says, quote, he's known for collecting precious things and keeping them against their will. Later, however, we learn from I'm going to say servant or, lady's maid in Viscount Takaris' house that he just makes them an offer they, quote, can't refuse. And that's how he collects them. So is this Xaden being a little dramatic? Is this Xaden, looking through some maybe not so great colored glasses when he thinks about Takaris? I'm a little confused because I don't think Takaris ever keeps people against their will. I do believe the lady's maid when she says that.
I believe that both of these perspectives can simultaneously be true. An offer that they can't refuse is one way of saying he, Takaris, gives them no other choice to get something that they desperately need in return. Take the premise of A Court in Thorns and Roses. Don't worry, this is not a spoiler. It's just a summary that you could literally find on the back of the book. Farah takes an offer she can't refuse, but she still considers herself kept against her will. Beauty and the Beast, that's another great example. For someone like Xaden, putting Violet in this position, it absolutely wouldn't be an option. So I think that technically, yes, it is offering them something that they can't refuse, but it's because Takaris knows how desperately they need it, and he's essentially trapping them in a choice, quote unquote, that they don't actually have a choice to get what they so desperately need. So that's the way that I took it there.
That's interesting because in numerous examples like that, where it's a choice, but it's also not a choice, it's normally I'm not going to say blackmail, but it's normally a negative outcome that the character is trying to protect against. And while Viscount Dracarys does give her technically a negative outcome, he really does focus on the fact that you're going to be safe and you're going to live out on an island which by the way, another mention of the Isles, we'll get more to that later, but like you'll live out on an island with all your family and friends and da-da-da-da-da. And Violet's like, that's cool, bro, but that's literally impossible. So either Dracarys is bad at his job in that way, or Violet just doesn't have anything that negatively would impact her that greatly, which I don't know. She's got some negative shit going on.
I think it's more that she is a selfless person and Dracarys is not able to cater to such selfless people. She says it's not possible. For her, it certainly could be possible. I mean, yes, there would definitely be some logistics to jump through, but it could happen for her, but it's not possible because then that is her taking the coward's way out, as she puts it. So I think that it's Dracarys not being able to give her what she wants because she is a selfless person and her needs are everyone's needs and not just her own. So that's how I took it there.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about that when we get to second Signet stuff. But I want to discuss my last question when it comes to Dracarys, which is, does Xaden think that she's going to be offered something, like he's mentioning, by Dracarys that he is worried she won't be able to refuse? Like, I can't even imagine what he thinks that Dracarys is going to offer her, that he is so terrified that he literally will not even let her, and I will say that very specifically, let her go to Corden.
Like we were just saying, Dracarys' offer, it is tempting, but it's unrealistic for Violet. And Xaden knows that Dracarys does want her lightning wielding ability. It's the ultimate defense against Wyvern and the Venom for his city. Now, maybe it's not so much what he would offer her, but Xaden is absolutely terrified for Violet's well-being when she does go to this palace of his. And so I think that it's actually more about like a ransom, or poor Amelians want her dead. Like, maybe Dracarys doesn't, but everyone else does. And so I think that that might be a little bit more of his concern, is essentially letting her go into enemy territory and being captured and killed there because everybody wants her head on a spike. So not so much about being concerned about what Dracarys would offer her, but more about the environment that she would be going into.
That is a great fucking point. I had not thought of that. That to me makes more sense. Then I'm like, okay, I kind of get your overprotective bullshit there, Xaden. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. We will touch on that a lot more when we get to those stretch of chapters. Last thing before we return back to Basgiath, I love that Violet is like, oh, well, I'll have to tell you about this, and also this, and Dane's sparring, and Jack fucking Barlow coming back to life, and Xaden's like, so much for option number 2. Like, that is one of my favorite stretches of just like a couple paragraphs in the book. It's so well written and so well done. Back to Basgiath. Taryn says to Violet, quote, with all these dragons present, I have no doubt that Varys and Atos will have been alerted on your return. Is he talking about Dane Atos? Or is he talking about God fucking damn it Dane's dad, Atos? Because how would God fucking damn it Dane's dad, who's on a coastal outpost in the middle of butt-fuck nowhere, how would he know that Violet is back? I'm guessing he's talking about Dane.
I had not thought of that. Yeah, that's a really good point.
God fucking damn it, Dane's dad is everywhere in the story through the infantry and like through all of this stuff. So like, is he traveling back and forth a lot more often than we know? But like, I also think Taryn would have been like, oh, by the way, like that guy who's trying to kill you in a terrible, really inconspicuous way, he's here.
Yeah, I think that it would have to be Dane because he is like her wing leader. So like she's in his chain of command. So it would make sense that Dane would be alerted to her returning. Now, does he make an appearance or does he do anything? No, because it's Dane. But I do wonder if that was purposefully supposed to be Dane or if that was another editing thing. Then I'll leave it at that.
Moving on. So Sloane, as Violet is walking down from the flight field, she has to pass by the gauntlet, and Sloane is climbing and practicing the gauntlet, but she's climbing the 4th ascent where her squad mate falls, but luckily grabs the rope. This is a friendly reminder because we did an entire mini archives on the gauntlet, but I'm just going to go into what the fourth ascent is. The fourth ascent is spinning logs, which are twisting in opposite directions while you have to climb them like stairs. This is one of the steepest sections of the course, and you basically have to just sprint across it as fast as possible.
I was really hoping for another opportunity here to talk about giant hanging balls. Good times from Fourth Wing episodes, which, by the way, Nicole, have you seen the TikTok of somebody who recreated the gauntlet? And it is absolutely incredible. Oh my gosh, yeah. We were tagged in it quite a bit. I commented on it. I'll find it on here. We can drop it in the show notes because it shows the fourth ascent here, what you just described so beautifully. There's the giant hanging balls. It has everything we ever could have wanted. And it is just... I love it. I love it so much. Shouts. I don't know whose TikTok it is. I don't have it in front of me, but oh my gosh, shouts to you who drew that. Fantastic.
Also, we have several people reminding us that we said that we would create one near the playground at my house, and I'm still game.
Oh, we absolutely will. It just happens that every single time I come over to your place, like we are in such a hurry. We are so go, go, go that like we need to carve out some time to go play on a playground. Who knew?
We also need to go like celebrate the last 3 months because y'all, we still have not had an opportunity for Lexi and I to like go out and clean.
Yeah, we haven't even like had lunch over this. And we live 20 minutes away from each other too. Like it's not that far.
It's been insane. So Immaterio though, I want to talk about this guy because what a dude. He might take my favorite professor title beside DeVera, and of course my guy Professor Grady. I love him.
Now hold on, I gotta call you out here for 2 seconds. Now I absolutely agree with you with Immaterio. He has definitely grown on me, but you gave him so much shit in Fourth Wing for how bad of a referee he was on the mat and the challenges and all of that. Like you really laid into him.
I still stand by it, especially since he let Violet almost be murdered by a venom twice. So I still stand by that. However, the fact that he's like, you know, if I had favorites, which I don't, obviously, I love him for that reason. I also realize I'm forgetting my other favorite professor, which is Professor Kaori, who... I love my guy, Professor Kaori, and I wish we saw more of him in his book. We're about to go into a big stretch with him, but I don't know. I think Grady might be up there as number one, though. I love him.
Grady's still number one. There you go. I mean, DeVera is definitely my personal favorite. Yeah. DeVera and Felix. I love Felix as well.
I'm not including Felix because I'm only including people who are current professors. Felix is a hard ass, but he's dope. I love Felix. Now, I do wonder, speaking of Immaterio, when did Violet and Xaden become his favorite students? Because might I remind you, he let her die almost twice by venom, and he let her go up against 2 of her wing leaders. Like, Immaterio's good, but that's not exactly favorite behavior.
But it's also just within the codex. Like, why would he not let her do that? And also, again, with the venom, like, I am still really curious about if he's been, like, on the lookout for people on the mat who, like, accidentally or purposefully draw power, and then like he's like the alerter about the venom. Again, I don't think that's actually accurate. But to answer your question about when Violet and Xaden became his favorite students, I bet that Immaterio really respects them for how they've each risen in their own ways in the writer's quadrant. He's seen firsthand how hard Violet has worked to train and learn how to survive as a writer. She survived all of those challenges with Jack, with Xaden and Dane. Like, obviously she was going to survive those, but in the moment we didn't know. With the other assassin attempt and how badass she was and just killing him, like, she can hold her own, and I think that he really and truly respects that. We also later learn that Immaterio sympathizes with the revolution, so much so that he actually flies off with them to Arisha. So I imagine he's inwardly proud of how Xaden seized his opportunity to find his own place in the writer's quadrant and rise in rank there. So I can definitely see how they became his favorites.
I agree. That makes a lot of sense. Professor Kaori. I miss my guy. I miss my guy, Professor Kaori. I love that. And I didn't even catch this on my first couple rereads. This is one of the things about listening to audiobooks. Some things, like some sentences just totally get brushed over because you're doing something or something like that. So you just totally forget it. And then when you're sitting down and reading it, which I do for the deep dive outlines, I saw it and I was like, oh my God, I totally did not even realize it. But I love that she walks right past Professor Kaori before she goes up into her room. Now, here's my question. Did he see her and immediately go to Pancheck? Or did he see her, he's already been to Pancheck, and he like sneaks up behind her to see how he can help?
I'm going to go with option 2 because I was under the impression he was like lurking on the second year floor waiting for her to arrive after he's already talked to Panchek. This has already been settled with Panchek because that was first order of business, because he knows that something's up here with Varish and he needs to intersect it. He even has a book that he's been reading, and I think it's just to pass the time as he waits for her.
Oh, I love that. That makes me happy. That's canon. That's good.
Yeah.
I love him. What a guy. I'm sad he stayed behind and he didn't go to Eurasia. I think that if he knew one of the dragon breeding grounds was going to be like a newly refurbished dragon breeding ground in the second half of the book, I think he definitely would have headed over to like be able to see the first few baby dragons, or the first black baby dragons, be born for a long time.
Well, now hold on, because the black baby dragons, they are still gold right now, and it's only the elders who are assuming that they will become black. I think that they're actually still in the Veil. So I think that Professor Kaori, like he says, he stays behind not because he doesn't sympathize with the revolution or believe in what they're doing, but because he feels an innate responsibility to Bisgayeth. He has a loyalty to Bisgayeth, not necessarily Navarre's leadership, but just to the school that he loves so much.
I hate Varish. He sucks. And we're not even in chapters 35 and 36. It'll be a drinking game next episode how many times I say, God damn it, I hate Varish. But first off, who are his two henchmen? Because we see them pop up over and over again. Are they Venin? Are they not Venin? It would make sense to me, at least, that they are Venin because they are super controlled by Varish.
Let me just say, my brain needs logical world-building answers, and it is really struggling with all of this. Who is Venin, and how/why are they controlled, and all this talk. Like, yes, I love it, and at the same time, I don't, because I need facts, people. I need facts. Everything we know about Venin and being within the wards, like, it's totally turned our worlds upside down, much like Violet's. However, in this instance, I am going to lean no on Venin. I believe that I am a little bit more, I'll call it conservative, when it comes to who's a Venin. You're a Venin, you're a Venin, you're a Venin. I'm a little bit more conservative with that. One of these henchwomen is Nora, who we later learn has the mind signet of knowing when you tell the truth or lie. I feel like it would be too risky to, quote unquote, allow mind signet writers to be Venin. And she obviously needs to use her power when she's being Varish's henchwoman, which brings up the whole other question about how are these Venin being controlled, and if it actually has to do with this power blocking serum. And if that is the case, then that must mean they can't use their magic. I can feel myself starting to go down a rabbit hole here. I'm going to pull myself right out and simply say that the two hench people here are not Venin. Final answer. I have a lot of thoughts about Venin and controlled and proactive versus reactiveness. With all of that context, not Venin here.
So here's one thing I will counter with, because you said that it would be risky to have people who have mind signets be Venin. So then what does that mean for Varish? Because it would be fucking risky to have a Venin have the signet of, oh, I just get to see your, biggest weakness, which is a mind signet, and a fucking scary one at that.
So that goes into the, I'll call it reactive versus proactive Venin control. I don't think that Navarre is turning people into Venin on purpose. I think that they are having to react and control people who have already turned Venin. So with someone like Nora, I don't think that, they made her a Venin so that she can be controlled and therefore a henchwoman. I think that she's just a terrible person and she's a henchwoman because she's Varish's second, However, I think that Varish, if he is a Venin, he did that all on his own. He is an evil enough person to absolutely draw from the source. Now, again, I think that he's also evil enough to continue drawing from the source. So that's my big question mark about him being a Venin here, because I don't feel like Atos or someone is controlling him. Now, there is a lot of control language around him, but back to the signet part, I don't think that leadership is turning people into Venin on purpose, but they are instead having to react to people turning Venin. And that's what I mean by them not targeting mind signet people to turn into Venin. Woo, that was just a big circle I just did.
Except for Second Wing, because they're definitely turning people in Second Wing Venin. That's my headcanon, and I'm sticking to it. But I do want to say, when it comes to villains in stories, I love/hate villains in stories so much. But one of the things I hate so much about villains and what they do is when they twist the truth or what the protagonist's words are to mean something that incriminates them. Umbridge was a master at this, but Varys says, you do know that impersonating a commissioned officer is against the codex, do you not? Like, I hate it when, like, I'm saying hate, I love hate this shit. I love hate this shit because villains are delicious sometimes, and Varys is terrifying, but he is a delicious villain. When they twist those words of our protagonist, it's just like, oh, it's like my number one pet peeve is that misunderstanding, and this is just that to the nth degree. It's just, oh God, I hate it. But I do love this line from Violet. This is her inner monologue. She says, folding my arms across my chest, the shoulder has way more give to it than I expected. This line tells us on a reread that Rhiannon did in fact already summon the knife through the wall that was in her jacket. This is show, don't tell shit that I love. Back to Varys. So Varys says, quote, are you accusing me of abusing my power where this cadet is concerned? Colonel Kaori. Colonel is in italics here, by the way. This is not my italics and Tinsic bullshit. I'm just saying that for an emphasis. But technically, Varys is a major, which is 2 ranks lower than Colonel, which Colonel Kaori. So it's weird that he's emphasizing Colonel here, especially as he's literally giving an order and trying to go against a person who is 2 ranks higher than him.
That is indeed strange. I wonder if he thinks less of Kaori because Kaori is a permanent professor, since his signet as an illusionist is so vital for the classroom setting. We learned this in Fourth Wing. Side note, his illusionist signet is one of my absolute favorite signets in the series, and also the one that I think Nicole would have. But maybe Varys thinks less of Kaori because he considers himself a war veteran who has seen more action and he's risked his life more and all of that stuff. So it certainly doesn't explain the major versus colonel phrase, but it does make me think that Varys, thinks that he's higher up than Kaori despite their rankings.
Well, now, to be fair, Kaori is a professor at the school, taking military rank out of the question. He's a professor at the school, and Varys is vice commandant at the school.
Right.
So maybe that counteracts or maybe that overrides the colonel versus major. I don't know, because I have never been in the military and have not done a whole lot of deep dives. I had to ask my husband actually on the rankings. I was like, because he was in JROTC and all that kind of stuff. So like hearing from him, like, what are the ranks and all this stuff? And he went on a very long explanation, and I was like, thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
What you said about the vice commandant versus being a professor, I think that's absolutely correct, because there is some language at some point where it is said that the vice commandant only reports to the commandant, who is Pancheck there. So I think that despite the ranks here, that is really what I believe, that is certainly what Varys is actually referring to here.
I think you are right on the money there. Yes. But Kaori comes back with a priceless line. He says, oh no, I think you abuse your power in general. Like, I just love Kaori and I miss him.
This was one of my favorite clapbacks of the whole series. Like, I just loved it so much. Oh, man.
Now, Kaori is playing chess while Varys is playing, like, angry, frustrated checkers. Kaori's saying to Varys that Violet was influenced by Terran's emotions, and because even the strongest amongst the humans cannot override their dragon's emotions. But Varys says, quote, some of us do not bow to the whims of our dragons. In fact, we influence them. We'll get to that in a second. But what the fuck do you make of this? Because those italics, we influence them. Them is in italics. I'm on my italics bullshit again, friends. But it is sus, because even Kaori says, odd. Would that mean that you influenced Solus when he set fire to the squad of bonded riders after Parapet? To which Varys replies, we're done here. And homeboy knows he lost, so he just like gets on out of there. But I have questions around this language massively.
I feel like we actually have answers.
We do?
Yeah. So, like, from my perspective, this right here demonstrates exactly what we've been saying. Solus is a smaller, less powerful dragon that, according to Terran, he makes poor judgment on who he bonds with, because Solus enables and gives power to an evil asshat like Varys. And I really do think that some dragons, specifically these smaller oranges like Solus and Bade, they gravitate towards these aggressive, power-hungry humans as a way to compensate. And Solus bonding with Varys makes Solus more powerful, at least in his perspective. And that right there makes Solus susceptible to being influenced by his rider, because he is leaning on his rider to exude power, control, cruelty, and strength. When a pairing like Taryn and Violet, obviously it's the dragon that has the power and control and cruelty and strength. I'm also going to say, however, that all of this is subconscious for Solus. I don't think that the dragon would actually be self-aware enough for this realization of being like, I'm not very powerful, so I'm going to go after an evil asshat. No, I don't think that's the case at all here. I think that is all subconscious in Solus and other similar dragons' mindsets. I feel like I just gave Solus a therapy session with all the subconscious and like inner meanings and whatnot.
Interesting. I think that this line, especially like the "we influence them," is a direct alarm of Varys is a venom. I take that as like very, you know how like Bade was being influenced by Jack Barlow. We didn't really get any descriptions of Solus's eyes when he roasts half of Third Squad. So we don't know if his eyes were glazed over like they are with Bade at the very end when Jack Barlow literally has Bade destroy the Wardstone at Besgaiath. So I took this more as a venom, wink, wink, hint, hint from our girl, Rebecca Yarros. But Lexi, with the weight of Navarre on her shoulders, Violet is under a lot of stress. And I don't know about you, Lex, but stress equals breakout city for me. And since the holidays are around the corner, I'm feeling some extra stress. Gifts are giving me anxiety this year. I don't know why, but thus my skin has been following suit. And while we cannot control every aspect of the holidays or whether or not our families will like our gifts or the weight of the world of Navarre, we can help you, our listeners, feel confident in your own skin with our partner for this episode, Apostrophe.
Whether you're dealing with breakouts, signs of aging, or acne scarring, Apostrophe will help you love the skin you're in. Apostrophe is an online platform that connects you with an expert dermatology team to get customized acne treatment for your unique skin. Simply fill out an online consultation about your skin goals and medical history, then just snap a few selfies and a dermatology provider will create a treatment plan just for you.
So I filled out my online consultation last week, and just a few days ago, my Apostrophe box was delivered, and I got 3 bottles. And one of the things I love about this is I've done something similar to like this before, and you get these teeny tiny little bitty bottles, not with Apostrophe. I was so excited when I saw full-size daddy big boy bottles when I opened up my Apostrophe box. I got 3 different skincare treatments in my box, and one of the things I love is my SPF. I really don't like moisturizers that feel super thick and heavy, and this is like the lightest freaking SPF, and again, it's a big old bottle and it's gonna last me for freaking ever. I love it.
Oh man, I'm so excited. Mine's on the way. I can't wait for it to come. We have a special deal for our audience. Get your first visit for only $5 at apostrophe.com/FF when you use our code FF for Fantasy Fangirls. That is a savings of $15, folks. This code is only available for our lovely listeners.
To get started, go to apostrophe.com/FF and click Get Started, then use code FF at sign up and you'll get your first visit for only $5. Thank you, Apostrophe, for sponsoring today's episode. So our girl Rhee, I'm so proud of her. She summons through the wall. Now, many people, and for a while I would count myself as one of them, thought that this is a huge sign towards Violet's second signet of being an amplifier. In our recent Q&A for December with our Patreon members, we discussed our thoughts on Violet's second signet. We went into the different theories that we've heard, the ways that we're leaning, specifically discussing, however, this moment when it came to discussing Violet as an amplifier. And to be quite honest, we actually don't think that this is a moment of Violet amplification or another second signet clue. It has been teased since Rhiannon got her signet in Fourth Wing that she will be able to summon through walls. So it makes sense that after our girl has been working hard, that this signet finally did manifest, especially in a time of great need and stress. So I really do think that this is not so much an amplifier moment or a Violet second signet moment to put a whole blanket over it, and more so Rhiannon up-leveling her skills as a summoner.
Yes. Nicole and I are both leaning towards Violet's second signet manifesting actually in part 2 of our story, but we are both still keeping very open minds as to when it happens and what her second signet is. Neither of us are fully in one camp or another. We want to complete our thorough deep dive reread. We'll continue pointing out little things, and we're sure that we'll discuss in a later bonus episode more about our final thoughts on Violet's second theory. But in this moment, I am just so proud of Rhi, and I can't wait to see how her signet continues to serve our crew in future books. It was so cool seeing how it played out in the final battle, and I'm so excited to see how she continues to do this, especially going through walls now.
I'm so proud of her. Speaking of being proud of our squad, Violet finally tells her friends almost everything. The fact that Rhi saves the ass of not just Violet, but every single marked one in this college. Remember, because if Varish found out about the alloy hilted dagger that was in Xaden's flight jacket, he would know that Xaden has been stealing them, and he's responsible for every marked one's life because of the 107 scars on his back. Because he betrayed Navarre, he and all of the marked ones' lives would have been forfeit. So it makes fucking sense that Violet is finally like, okay, you just saved like 107 people, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you. Although I do think it was smart of Violet to leave out Brennan and Erasia. Like Violet said, those are not really her secrets to tell.
Some readers do argue that the secrets Violet does share here also aren't hers to tell. But in my opinion, she's sharing the dangers of what is really out there, and that certainly does affect all of our characters here. What really killed Day, and thus Liam, how they've all been lied to when the enemy is coming to their doorstep. Brennan and Erasia are secondary to this massive reveal about Venin, and it's only this massive reveal that directly impacts each of our characters learning about the secret here. In fact, when Violet essentially told/asked Mira about the war back in Samara, she didn't even hint about Brennan, only what would directly impact Mira and her, I'll call it, moral compass. So friends, let's give Violet some credit about what she does still keep secret here and understand why she did share what she shared in the moment that she shared it. I wholeheartedly agree, Nicole. If there was a time to tell her squad, it's definitely now. It felt so fitting in the story, even though I will say I was a little surprised on my first read that we were only like halfway through, not even halfway through this book, and the truth is quickly unraveling.
And one thing I will point out also is that Violet is saying like, oh my gosh, like they're taking this so much better than I did with Xaden. I want to just put a little caveat in the fact that Brennan is her brother, and Xaden kept that from her. Rhi doesn't know Brennan. She didn't grow up with Brennan. She didn't think that her brother was dead for 6 years. So the fact that Violet is angry with Xaden, I think that is just an entirely different playing field than Rhiannon and her reaction to Violet could have even been anger, and Violet is shocked that it's not. Violet, compares her own reaction to, when Xaden is everything is unraveling to Rhiannon's reaction of when she learns everything from Violet. And I think they're just entirely separate things because of Violet's connection to the people who were involved.
It's so interesting you say that because I love how we get this contrast about how Violet's friends react to learning the truth and how Violet reacted with Xaden at the end of Fourth Wing. I agree that there are definitely those nuances there, but while Violet and Xaden have been on the path towards healthier communication and rebuilding their trust in each other, I believe that this scene here plays its own big role in Violet's own healing journey with her relationship with Xaden. She realizes that she treated Xaden unfairly, and she's taken off guard when her friends react with acceptance and compassion and support that quickly turns into problem solving. And this moment of realization, it culminates when Violet says in a whisper more to herself than her friends, because that's exactly why I've been so pissed at Xaden. I love that realization that she has because it really put things in perspective for her. Now, I agree with you that she was definitely in her right to be upset with Xaden, but to the extent that she was upset with him, I love seeing the contrast here with her friends' reactions to her. We've said it before on the podcast, and I doubt this will be the last time, but Rhi is the best friend a girl or anyone could ever have. And Nicole, I like to think of you as my Rhi because you and her share so many wonderful traits.
Really? That's so nice. Thank you. I like to think that I'm a badass too. I really appreciate that. You're my Mira. You're my Mira. All the good qualities about Mira. Maybe not the gaslighting and the let me brush this under the rug and call you crazy for a second.
I don't know. I'm sure I've done that before.
We forget the high school years you and I shared together. But Sawyer says that in Lucerys, which is where he's from, quote, we aren't even open to trading vessels to the Isle Kingdoms. This is when he's talking about distribution of information and how if Markham didn't want something out, it would literally just be as simple as him not sending out that missive to these further away kingdoms. But Lucerys, I want everyone to remember, it is in the top northwest side of Navarre, right on the coast. So he says that we're not even open to trading vessels with the Isle Kingdoms. These Isle Kingdoms are keeping me up at night. Where are they? Because are they off the coast of Lucerys to the west? But also the lady's maid and Takaris' house mentioned that Takaris trades with them, or at least used to trade, the Diverley silk with them. And Corden is like way the fuck south. So does that mean they were either traveling really far to get to the Diverley silk, which is fair, or like, where are these Isle Kingdoms? Where are you?
First of all, I am just so proud of you and how on it you are with the geography today. Nicole.
Here's the deal. I'm horrific with real world geography. You can name a country. I probably have no idea where it is. But fantasy geography, that shit, that lives rent free in my head.
About these isles, I suppose, maybe very naively, I supposed that they were in both the north and the south. Like, there's pockets of isles all around the continent. Maybe that is a crazy assumption. It sounds a little bit crazier when I say that out loud.
Here's something I did just realize, though. Kingdoms is plural. When Sawyer says this, he says, we're not even open to trading vessels to the Isle Kingdoms. So is there some to the south? Is there some to the east, the west, north, all that kind of stuff?
I can pretty much guarantee that there are at least a few of these Isle Kingdoms around the Navarre borders, or, like off the coast and whatnot there, because it's not just with Pormil, because Navarre, it would technically be easy for Navarre and the Isles to travel to one another, but they obviously don't for obvious reasons. But then I think that because Pormil also has a connection here to the Isles, yeah, I'm going to go with they're located in both the north and the south.
I think I'm going to join you on that location. If the third Empyrean book does not have a map with the Isle Kingdoms on it, I might fling myself in a lake.
I think if that's the case, we might need to write Rebecca a letter. Not that we already haven't talked to her in the DMs, but we would actually have to write her a letter and ask her some very specific official questions. Like the map.
Please give me a map breakdown. That's all I need. Fucking Riddick comes in with the knowledge that literally saves Navarre. Wow. All I can think of during the scene when Violet is like, I need a first-hand account, but it's not like after founding Basgiath, the first six just like sat around and wrote a story. And Riddick drops the knowledge bomb that, well, they kept journals, at least two of them. And Violet and everyone just like slow turns to him. And all I can think about is that scene in National Treasure. I can't remember any of the names of those characters, but I remember they're checking out at a store and the main guy, Nicolas Cage, is like holding up $100 bill, and the side character, who's, the comedic relief, says something along the lines of like, oh, well, it could be da-da. And the two characters just like look over at him and he's like, do I know something about American history that you don't? And that's all I can think of here. I hope that was what inspired this scene. It was so good.
Oh, I love it. I've also seen a few memes on the internet of that too. It's just like so perfectly captured. I love it.
It's perfect. So we learn that he learned this information during squad battle last year when they were searching Lilith's office. I again have to bring up the question, squad battle? How is this allowed? Because the fact that they learned this information, a very classified missive in Lilith's office, should not have been allowed, and they won squad battle. I have questions, but I have another question, and that is, why do you think Lilith was looking into info on Warwick and Lyra's journal? Could this have anything to do with Papa Sorrengail's research that we speculated every episode this whole fucking book? And maybe she was working to continue it. Because remember, last episode, Violet says something to the lines of her father knew something about the first six or had some research on the first six. And it's just like this half a sentence, again, dropped in the middle of a scene. Is this what finally killed him, though? Did leadership find out that he was getting information on the first six, and this is what finally led them to kill him? We are both very much in the camp that leadership killed Papa Sorrengail. And maybe Lilith is trying to crack the code as to why her husband was killed, especially especially because Violet goes on to think in this same page, quote, Jasenia would know if we had those books, let alone a sub-level vault. My father would have told me, ... Wouldn't he? There is a reason that Rebecca Yarros immediately brought up Violet's father right after this info knowledge drop.
I love where your mind is going. Now, I will, because I did a lot of deep diving here all around this and other phrases throughout Iron Flame and Fourth Wing. Riddick does say that the journals are in a classified ledger, and a ledger, for everyone who doesn't know, is a book of accounting transactions. So we know Lilith was working on the Bisgaiath budget at the time, but I wonder if this classified ledger was more of a book of records than like financial transactions. That would just fit a little bit more here in the context, that it was a book of records that documented the inventory of these highly classified artifacts. So it's like Riddick came across the inventory of what's in these super secret vaults here. With that said, though, there are definitely dots connecting between Papa Sorrengail's research, knowledge about these journals, and whatever Lilith knows. During that Patreon Q&A we did last week, we talked about the authors of the epigraphs and speculating if any of the names are actually Papa Sorrengail, and he's been present with us in some way or another in these epigraphs under a different name. I love this idea. I started exploring it last night. I have a few prime suspects, and I cannot wait to dive more into this and share it all with you soon enough. That's
you
research.
Little tease! You little tease! I want to know.
Again, I am grasping at straws here, but I have a few suspects, like I said.
If I don't get a text message from you after this episode telling me who this is, I'm going to be so mad.
Man, there's spreadsheets for it, okay? But seriously, like, where is her dad's research? Because Violet knows where his research is. We have to remember that. It is in the one location he spent the majority of his after-hours time, which would make sense that it was his study. I was wondering if maybe it's a secret study in the archives, like how the vault is hidden, and Violet wonders how many other hidden areas there are here. But, you know, I actually do wonder if it's not in the archives because Papa Sorrengail had to be secretive, and Lilith has been protecting it ever since then. And even though she is one of the big leaders of Bisgaiath, I don't feel like she just wanders into the archives willy-nilly all the time. I wonder if she's protecting his study or his after-hours location where his research is. I wonder if she's protecting it like maybe she did with Violet's old room, where we speculated that maybe she put up wards so that nobody would go into Violet's room, and that's why it stayed untouched after she went into the writer's quadrant. I don't know. I'm really hung up on his research, and I'm going to be talking about it quite a bit more in this episode, actually. Like right now. Later, when Lilith gives Lyra's journal to Violet, she says, quote, your father told me once that his research showed that Warwick never wanted anyone else to hold the power of the wards, unquote. Such a throwaway line amid so much other important information, but it's one more mention of his research connected to extremely relevant issues that all of our people are having here. I need to know more.
The fact that she knows where it is and hasn't done anything about it is unforgivable, Violet. Unforgivable.
It's got to come up at some point. Like, why else are we getting so many teases here?
Knowing Rebecca Yarros' writing style, there is no way it's not coming up at some point. There is no way that it's not like the key to the whole fucking series.
Don't do as bad like what Game of Thrones did with all of those speculation and theories.
How dare you mention that name? So we get this nice little 4-week montage in the middle of this passage, but there is a huge piece of information that is just like brushed over. Sawyer stumbles onto a 300-year-old passage that confirms more than one wardstone was created. I took this to mean that more than one wardstone was created, more than 2 wardstones were created, because if this was like such a revelation, Violet already knows that there's 2. So it seems to me like this is confirmation that there's more than 2.
So the reason why I think that this is such a toss-away line in the montage is because she already knew this information.
Oh.
So that's why I was assuming that she's like, well, yeah, obviously there's more than one wardstone because there's one in Orisha. Yeah, that it is, that they're like, oh yeah, there's more than one. And Violet's like, well, yeah, duh, there's more than one because we know of the second one. So that's why it was just kind of, they just kind of moved on with it.
I took it as like there's going to be like, surprise, there's going to be more than one or more than two. And like, maybe there's one in Poramil. Maybe there's one on these fucking Isle kingdoms that we just keep hearing so much about over and over again.
So for speculating on where a third wardstone could be, I would say it has to be somewhere where the hatching grounds used to be, because the hatching grounds are where there's raw sources of magic, and that is where these wardstones have to be built on. So maybe there's one where Andarna's first home is, if we assume she wasn't in the Vale 650 years ago and she was brought to the Vale when the unification happened and all of the dragons had to sacrifice and abandon their original hatching grounds and come to the Vale for all of that unified protection. We've speculated if Andarna had a second home based on a line she says to Violet in Fourth Wing about, empathy about having a second home. And I'm thinking that maybe this was the case. She was brought to the Vale as an egg to be protected when her den sacrificed their hatching grounds. So the real question here is, what happened to the rest of her den? What made them go extinct? Did they go extinct? She says that she was left behind to potentially breathe fire for the wardstone. So I wonder if her den maybe refused to bear a rider, and that is somehow connected to their extinction, or why they are not considered a seventh breed of dragons, why they're essentially completely secret and unknown. Does this have some kind of connection to Warwick's lie about the wardstones? I'm going down another rabbit hole here, so I need to pull myself out. But if there is a third wardstone, I think it is wherever there are other hatching grounds, and we know that they are throughout the continent. But again, I have to wonder, where is Andarna's original hatching grounds? And could there be a wardstone wherever that is?
I love you for so many reasons, but I think your dragon politics soapbox might be number one. I think it might be going up there on number one reason that I love you.
We're definitely going to do a hatching grounds archives. I don't know how much there's going to be on it because we really don't know a lot. But I love this. I love all of this dragon history so much.
You're... goat. I love you. So it's stated at the end of Iron Flame that there's no way to activate the wardstone in Erasia because Andarna can't activate both of them. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I might be right there.
I just reread that part last night as I was going down some of my rabbit holes, and I had to do my double check. So yes, so Violet gives Xaden the option. I can activate one wardstone. Which one do you want? Basgiath or Erasia? And he said Basgiath because if they don't activate the one in Basgiath, there is no possible way to even activate the one in Erasia because they're all dead. So that is where Violet then takes that and it's like, okay, so we need to activate the one at Basgiath, and that's why I need Andarna.
So then if there are even more than two, there wouldn't be a way to activate all of them unless Andarna's den is on the fucking Isle Kingdoms, and that's where just a bunch of Andarnas are flying around. The Isle Kingdoms is my box to put anything unknown in. If it's unknown, I shove it in the Isle Kingdoms.
It's funny, that's like me and Papa Sorrengail's research. There is a lot depending on Andarna and her role. Of course, Violet makes this assumption, which we know that all of Violet's assumptions are not always accurate. So is Andarna uniquely able to breathe fire on multiple wardstones, unlike the other dragon dens? I could definitely see this being a possibility. Also, we have to remember that the two black dragons that can currently breathe fire have both activated a wardstone. Perrin activated the one in Erasia, even though it didn't fully work, but it was working a little bit there. And Coda activated the one in Basgiath. Are the two new soon-to-be black dragon hatchings going to need to grow up before these other wardstones, if they exist, can be activated, since Perrin and Coda have used their power for two of them, and it would take 3, 4, 5 years for these little tiny black dragons to then be able to grow up and breathe fire. Or, of course, we have to ask, are they actually black dragons, or are they like Andarna? I think they are actually black dragons. I really do think that there is so much mystery about Andarna and how she was kind of the one that was left behind, and she's got this really big purpose. I do think that she is the only one of her kind on the continent now. Are there other ones in some other mysterious location, like the Isles? Who knows? But I think that at least for right now, we can safely assume she is the only dragon of her kind on the continent.
I agree completely. I think she is a solo dragon in that den. God, I could speculate about this forever. But let's move on to threshing. So first and foremost, before we even started Iron Flame, and before we got any little hints or teasers or anything like that, I was expecting events like threshing to be a major event in the book. But given our story, it takes, I don't even know if I can call it subplot Z, because it feels like it's subplot 0.0 0005. Like, it does make a lot of sense, though, that things like the gauntlet, things like threshing that were so prominent in Fourth Wing are not as prominent in Iron Flame. But the little taste of threshing that we did get was perfect. Auric bonding a blue sapphire-hued clubtail. This feels so right. I love my guy Auric. He's also compared to having the ease of dismounting his dragon in the same mannerisms as Xaden and Liam. I love this tie-in of the three of them. It feels really right. I think that Xaden and Auric are going to be friends by the end of this. And I do think that Auric has kind of, at least in my heart, has kind of taken a Liam-esque role, obviously for very different reasons. Liam was Violet's shadow and Auric definitely is a prince, but having a similar space in my heart for it. But I do feel like Auric is such a beloved character. I think he's going to be way more prominent going forward. And I love him so much. I love that he got a sapphire hue clubtail.
Just repeating everything you just said. I love Auric so much. Just so much. I also really want to see some Auric and blue clubtail fan art. I've looked online. I haven't seen any yet. If you know where it is, please send it to me because I need to see this beautiful sapphire hued clubtail. I can just absolutely picture it in my mind and it just makes my heart so happy and I want to see it in real life. Speaking of sapphire hued scales, I did some digging because it is so fitting that Auric's dragon has a sapphire hued scales. So the color sapphire represents honesty, loyalty, and dignity. And it is also very closely associated throughout history with royalty. I can't remember if we learn his dragon's name in the book. I don't think we do. Or if we did, it was with all of the craziness at the final battle and whatnot. So I don't think we do. But oh my God, how perfect is it that Auric has a sapphire colored dragon because of what sapphires represent. You know, I always said that I wanted a green dragon. Everybody knows that I would definitely have a green dragon, but I might be changing my mind. I might want not just a blue dragon, but a sapphire hued dragon. Oh my gosh, I want one so badly.
I was also going to say that I know I said a black dragon, but I would not be mad about a sapphire hued dragon. So we can have twin dragons, Lexi. You and I can have twin
This sounds wonderful.
I love that. I'd still want a clubtail though, so you can like bat people out of the sky. That still sounds like fun.
I'll have my dagger tail so that
Perfect.
they can be sister dragons.
Hey, that sounds like a children's book, Lexi.
And then, of course, Sloane bonds with a red dagger tail, just like Liam. I was so obsessed with this little touch and the callback to Liam. You know, because Sloane is such a very different person than Liam, and that was a little bit jarring for all of us. We've talked about that already, about Sloane's character versus Liam, but this little connection between the two siblings, it brings me so much joy, and I love it so much. Like, Liam is so present in these pages, and it looks like you're almost tearing up right now.
I am. I also just have big eyes, and part of having big eyes is just you always look like you're about to start weeping at any given moment. But I do think that there's just that little touch that she's a strawberry color. And I just love that. That just makes me so happy that she's a strawberry colored dragon. Oh,
she's like mid-sized, so she's not a small dragon, but she's not one of the big scary dragons. She's just like her little mid-sized strawberry red dagger tail. I love it so much.
It just sounds like a cute dragon. I love it.
Speaking of dragons, this stretch of chapters include a lot about Indarna still sleeping and Violet's concern for her. We get hints from Terran's demeanor that he's worried too, but he's trying not to worry Violet more than she already is, which totally backfires. But why do we think that Indarna is sleeping so long? Terran says that the length of time varies from one dragon to another, and because Indarna is so different from the other dragons like we were just discussing, we have to wonder if part of this is natural to her and it's another clue that she is extra special among dragons. Or maybe, is it because of her rocky start to the dreamless sleep and it has to do with her underdeveloped wing? Her body is trying to compensate for the lack of sleep that she got earlier, but ultimately, you know, the damage with her wing is unfortunately done. I do think that is maybe a combo of both of these things, but just wanted to pull that out because we get so much of concern for Indarna sleeping in this stretch of chapters.
See, I took that as a editing note to Rebecca. Hey, Rebecca, don't you think the reader's probably going to be wondering where the hell Indarna is? And then Rebecca adds in like a few little notes about Indarna after, you know, a very large amount of time has passed where we're like, what? She has 2 dragons. Where's her other dragon? So I almost took that as like a little nod to the reader of like, don't worry, Indarna's just still sleeping, but there's some mystery there because there's always mystery with Indarna. But Lexi, let's talk about these assassins.
Oh, boy.
I'm crying laughing because they're thinking that they have this like super secret message to deliver to Violet and Aya. And then Violet is like, let me guess, secrets die with the people who keep them. And it says, quote, the one on the left blinks in surprise. Atos, my guy, like, you know that he sat down everyone in second wing and was like, listen, you're going to have to
wing
say,
or the infantry here.
No, he says to second wing first because they were the round one. So round one of second wing, who were probably turned venom because second wing is sus, he sat them all down and said, secrets die with the people who keep them, and like had them like call it back to him almost like, it's like kindergarten class. And then because they all failed, he goes to his infantry cadets and it's like, look, you guys are used to calling back. You guys are used to being very uniform in unison. So the secrets die with people who keep them. And then the secrets die with people who keep them. Atos thinking he's this big mastermind. This is headcanon to me, by the way. Atos thinking he's this big mastermind is just comic glory.
Oh my God. I'm just dying. That would give me a really good ab workout. Just laughing there every single time. I have to wonder if, when Bodhi got attacked in the bathing chambers, are they saying that to him too? Like,
they have to be. Is this continuity, baby? Gotta.
Oh my gosh.
But Lexi, a few episodes ago, you teased that you do not think the infantry are venom. I disagree, but I have not heard your reasoning and I did not read it in the outline. I am 100% convinced that they are venom. Violet is slicing and stabbing into one of them on their arms as they're like literally carrying Violet over to the edge of the cliff, and he doesn't fucking budge. Like, she's literally slicing his arms open and he's like, dude, gonna go kill this chick. Now, note that Violet is not using her alloy hilted daggers here, but my only question mark with that is, why would Jack fucking Barlow kill them if they are both venom brothers or brethren?
I did say on a few episodes ago, I was like, I guarantee that they're not venom. And now as I outlined all of my reasons why, it's like, okay, all of this is very circumstantial. So while I still stick to my reasoning, I don't believe that they're venom, I have to realize that I don't have any hard evidence here. So here we go. I will say I originally assumed that these guys were venom, like the first year assassin on assessment day, but I kind of feel like that's what we're supposed to think. I can just totally picture Rebecca fucking with all of us because now we're all wondering who the hell is a venom. And again, I am somebody in the camp where I'm not going to assume they're innocent until proven venom, in my opinion. So when I reread this section, I am leaning towards no, that they're not venom based on this collective context that I'm about to go into. Number one, there is no hint of red eyes like there was with the first year assassin. This is essentially irrelevant though, because there is also no mention of Jack having red rims, and we know that he is a venom. I do believe that it's safe to assume that Jack hadn't channeled from the source recently. Most likely the other first year assassin did. I don't know how all of that works, but bottom line is these infantry soldiers do not have red eyes, so therefore we can at least not guarantee that they're venom. Number two, they're infantry. They are not just cadets either. They are grown soldiers. So could these infantry soldiers want more power and draw from the source? Absolutely. However, I feel like this is a lot more common among writers who are already power hungry and willing to risk their lives for power. Infantry made the choice not to risk the parapet to bond with a dragon. So I feel like they're naturally less likely to become venom because they don't have the innate character traits that makes one seek out venomhood, so to speak. There. This brings me right back to the point about, is leadership proactively making venom to control them, or are they reacting to people who are turning venom and having to do some damage control? I just don't think I can get behind that they are doing it. I know how much you love your second wing theory. I love it, but when we're talking about this, I can't pair it to that reasoning. I think that leadership's efforts, like I just said, are more reactive to people, specifically writers turning venom, versus proactively creating a controlled venom army. So how does this all relate to the infantry soldiers right here? I just don't think that they are being turned into venom. I think that would be much more of a writer thing. Number three, these infantry guys are very vocal about getting paid for this. They say it multiple times. Multiple of them say it like they are really gung-ho on Violet. It's nothing personal. It's just money. If they were venom being controlled to do this dirty work, why would they get paid?
True.
Why would they care about getting paid? And number four, we get no confirmation that she kills these infantry infantry soldiers with her alloy dagger, but by the descriptions, I don't think that her alloy hilted dagger is in the vicinity here, because remember, she has to keep that shit on lockdown because that dagger is a telltale sign that Violet knows about venom, and she has to be extremely mindful about how and when she uses it. Now, this brings up the very good question about how Violet killed the assumed venom assassin with a regular dagger back at the assessment day, since she didn't have her alloy hilted dagger from Xaden yet. My only answer is that he wasn't venom enough and the regular daggers worked, especially when she stabbed him in just the right place. But that calls into question how Jack survived a mountain crushed on him, because we assume he survived due to being venom, because who the fuck survives a mountain coming down on them if they're just human? Maybe Jack had turned more, maybe he was just harder to kill than the venom assassin.
Or maybe the venom on assessment day isn't dead. Maybe he's in the infirmary and Nolan is also simultaneously working on him. We never heard his name called. And if we know anything from Jack fucking Barlow, if the name is not called the next day, then all bets are off. So what if...
Hold on. I would just like to point out that Violet was not present during the death roll that day, and so therefore she would not have heard it. I'm going back to my why Jack should definitely be dead.
Well, Lexi, much like this scene and this entire book, I love it when fantasy stories are surprising, they're captivating, they're high intensity, which is why we are so excited to tell all of you listeners about the new season of Birds of Empire, a cinematic fantasy event in audio. The series takes us to New Dakota, 15,000 CE, thousands of years after the fall of our civilization. The Earth has reclaimed the cities and glories of the modern world, returning humanity to a new way of life that recalls advanced ancient civilizations, like maybe our ancient king. The histories of the old world survive only as myths and legends. Our tale focuses on 4 heroes from the great tribes of what was once South Dakota. They are known as the wolves, the rams, the bears, and the birds.
Book 1, The Dawn Age, introduced us to this world and the heroes who will follow as we chart the rise of the first empire of this new world. Now, as we go into Book 2, the seed of White Rock begins to weave our worlds and heroes' quests together. I love how it does that, as their destinies collide amid the backdrop of war, natural catastrophes, inflamed rivalries, new alliances, loves, hello, and losses, womp womp. All of them will be tested as the world heaves towards its new age, the Dawn Age, a place where new legends are born and a time when all things return. So search Birds of Empire and follow now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening now to never miss an episode.
We need to move into our favorite guy. Lexi, your favorite character in this entire book series ever to walk the book series planes, Jack fucking Barlow. So his eyes are described as icy blue. Now, it was actually described as icy blue twice in this stretch. Xaden's red-rimmed eyes are almost indistinguishable at the very end of this book, so Violet could very easily just not be seeing it. But the fact that I do think it's been a while since Jack has channeled, and the fact that it's twice mentioned that his eyes are blue, I do think that it's safe to assume the red rim, it's just not there. But I do wonder, because maybe leadership is controlling him so much so, and that's why he's so nice. Like, he's acting all sweet and innocent. Like, he's been given a second chance at life. And I do think that maybe leadership controlling him has some aspect at play with this. What are your thoughts?
Well, it goes back to Nolan saying that he's been trying to mend a soul. And he's so exhausted. And I can't help but go back to that conversation that he and Varys had that we really analyzed last episode about how Nolan's sessions are not working and Varys needed to come in with his particular expertise. What the heck did Varys do that made Jack go all nice and soft? So I really do think that there might be a serum here. Now, there's a huge question about when Jack is taking the serum. If it is the same one that Violet's taking, does that mean that his signet is blocked? Does that mean that his connection to Bade is blocked? We don't know a lot of that information yet. Or is he kind of acting on his own accord here and trying to play up the whole nice thing so that nobody suspects him?
It just doesn't seem like Jack Barlow's style. He's fucking venom, so what do I know?
Because also we learn at the end of this book that he has been essentially working with this venom for however long. So my gut is telling me that as all of this is playing out, he is on the back end still being a Venin, like has his own alternative agenda. Or I guess you could always say that something happens to him after our crew leaves Biscayeth, and while they're in Ratia, that's when maybe, since Varish isn't around as much to control him, that he kind of goes off, and that's when he creates his own agenda with the other Venin there. So I don't know. There's so many gaps in the knowledge that we have, and we can speculate all day long, and at the end of the day, we just don't have all the information.
I am so glad we have confirmation from that Variety article with Rebecca Yarros that we will get more Jack in book 3. And I can't believe I fucking just said that in that sentence. But it's true. I want to know more about his timeline and what he's doing. And
Caroline Ashton.
I have a lot of questions about Caroline Ashton, and I don't think I'm supposed to have as many questions about Caroline Ashton as I do.
I don't think a lot of people are supposed to have as many questions as we have when we read this book.
That's a real good point. But man. I do wonder, how did he know that Violet was in danger? He says that he heard people screaming, but at Battle Brief, when he was walking down the stairs, his little resurrected self, he immediately found her eyes. Does he have some kind of like Venin spidey sense on her? And also another thing on that, of course he fucking saved Violet. If he knew that she was the one in danger, the Venin want her. He needed to make sure that she didn't die and that she could, have the opportunity to like go off with the Venin and be with the Sage. I can't believe I actually just put that together on this like 4th or 5th reread, that's why Jack fucking Barlow saved her, is because she has a greater purpose and he wants to save her for the Venin. I don't know, Lexi, all this is so confusing.
I'm sitting here being like, wow, I was really naive. I just believed Jack when he said that he heard screams and came running. That he didn't know who he was saving, or he realized it was Violet and he, just jumped into action to save her because, like you said, she needed to stay alive. I didn't think about like some kind of, I'll call it tracker on her. Now, of course, that opens up the whole can of worms about, is Violet part Venin, which we're going to keep shut for right now because we need to get through this episode. The captured Venin at Dakaris' palace is also very excited to come across Violet and plans to bring her back to, quote, him. They obviously want her alive, and that would have to include Jack. Now, of course, we do have lots of questions about how he's connected to the Venin, what the timeline is, all of that, but let's just go with this for right now. Jack's reasoning for saving Violet and then letting her live definitely felt sus at the time. No way was this just a second chance and now they're even. He's definitely letting her live now because she's needed later. How and all of the questions around that, we do not have answers, but there you go. All right, it is time. I'm so excited to dive into this stretch here about the Royal Vault. Now, to kick it off, I just gotta say, Jasenia is one resourceful scribe. How in the world did she learn about where the secret vault is and how to get in? I'm assuming she searched and found the classified information, but dang, is our girl resourceful here. When I first read about how they needed someone in King Tari's bloodline and that it's a good thing they know a prince who hates his father, all I could think was, oh, how convenient. Because sometimes you just got to roll with these punches in these stories.
Literally, this could have been the only reason that Auric was brought into the story, and I'd be fine with it. I don't think it is. I think he's going to play a much larger role. I do think he's going to end up King of Navarre at the end of the series, but I love him that much that if he was just brought in for the slight convenience when it comes to the archives highs, I'd be so game. I'd be so game. I love Auric.
I love how he fits in our story. When Xaden and Violet are having their say something conversation, I just have to say it is so relatable. Violet is a problem-solving go-getter, and when she's hooked on something, she is laser-focused and goes after it. Like going to Corden to get the luminary or going into the archives to retrieve the journals. She asks for Xaden's thoughts and then just proceeds to talk over him. And he's like, hold on. You asked for my opinion, and now I'm sharing it. And all I can say is I can absolutely relate to Violet in this conversation because she is me in many conversations.
We have an inside joke in our family, and I really did not realize this until I started dating Brett, and he got really close with our family as well. We love interrupting in our family. Yeah. We are big interrupters, which is a habit we are all trying to fix. But this section killed me because when Brett and I have these conversations, I immediately start like, and he's like, wait, he's maybe kinder than Xaden. He goes, now, like, hold on, please. But Yeah, that is one of the most relatable Violet moments I think I've ever seen in this stretch of books. Yeah. But Xaden bringing up all the holes in their plan. Honestly, some of those I was shocked that Violet didn't figure out, or even Violet and Rhiannon and crew didn't figure out, or even Justinia, who, like you said, is one fucking resourceful scribe. They don't know how they're going to get the books back. That is a really big part of this heist. And they're like, I won't borrow tomorrow's trouble. And that does feel very reckless. And Xaden is known as the reckless one. And yet he's like, you guys didn't think about this? Like, come on, guys. I love that.
See, I would totally do the same thing that Violet and crew are doing, where it's like, okay, well, that's secondary to us getting the journals. First step, getting the journals. Second step, we'll figure it out after we get the journals.
See, I would want at least 2 to 3 plans of how we're going to get them back.
Yes, because, and they'd all need to be in spreadsheets. And you know what? Usually I would agree with you, but this is where I become a little bit of a more reckless, like, we just got to get shit done. Like, go, 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 go. We got to get stuff done.
This is where I'm like a obsessive planner. Oh, I learned something new about you today. Now, I love this moment between Xaden and Violet before they go into this heist. It is really important for them to have a moment to, I'll say, lock in their relationship before Violet goes into the torture sequence that we're going to cover next episode. So he hovers his lips over her, giving her the option to call their shower scene in Samara a one-night thing or a one-time thing. And I love that he does this. I love that he gives her this option of like, there was a lot of heightened emotions going on with that. Like, do you regret it? Do you want to go back to our previous arrangement? But also Violet to not only kiss him, and I love how it's described as like kissing him as if it's the first time. And it's just like, it feels like the first time, because this is really where they become a full-blown relationship, I'll say. Like, this is the beginning of that. Obviously, they really lock it in the rescue scene, and then obviously in the first few scenes in Erasure, but also for Violet to have a moment where she says in her inner monologue that she loves him and she's choosing him, but she still doubts that he loves her, knowing that she does mean something to him, however. This is one of their last private moments together, besides the like little alcove that's super, super short before he yeets on out of there. But this is one of their last private moments before Violet is captured. And having a moment where she is unsure that he loves her makes the I love you drop in the rescue scene just like, I love it. I love it so much. Plus, any excuse to get a steamy scene with them, especially before something as intense as the Archives heist, I will gobble it up like it's Turkey Day. I love it. I love it so much.
I love how we get a few little mysteries solved here. Number 1, Xaden killed Aric's brother Alec at Threshing. This was another little mystery since Fourth Wing, and I just love how this played out between Aric and Xaden. Their hatred for each other, but they also have this common goal, and Aric's just a little bit sassy to Xaden, and I love seeing when other people are sassy to him. It's not surprising, but I just loved how it played out.
I also love that Xaden is like, yeah, if Aric doesn't go along with the plan, I will kill him. And I love how he's like, I'll happily kill 2 princes. Like, he's just like, yeah, no problem. And I'm just like, nah, Xaden. Classic.
I do still need to know who told Aric that Xaden killed his brother. The only other person present at Threshing would have been Garrick. But Garrick has also been in Samara, so he has certainly not had an opportunity to talk to Aric, and I would have a lot of questions about their relationship if he did tell Aric. Now, I was also wondering maybe Aric's dragon told him, since the scene is soon after Threshing. It would seem kind of silly, and Aric definitely hates Xaden a lot before Threshing, so I'm assuming that he knew well before that. But again, it poses that question of who told Aric?
Well, because Aric does say when he's standing in the doorway, he's like, I wonder when you'd come for me, or I knew you'd come for me eventually, something like that. That sounds to me like he's known for a while. Now, I do wonder, when it's Garrick, Alec, and Xaden at Threshing, was there a dragon around? And maybe the dragon communicated to other dragons. But then how would that get back to Aric?
Well, Sagail was around because she saw what Xaden did and she liked that. And that's one of the reasons that she bonded with him, that and the scars on his back. So,
yes, that's a good question.
So one mystery closed and another one opens. Just in Rebecca's style here.
In this scene, we get another moment. Oh, Xaden, you're so great. And then you take some L's. Of Xaden putting Violet behind him. If you remember, in Fourth Wing, we were applauding Xaden Ryerson for always having Violet to the side of him, if not even in front of him, which signified him having massive amount of trust for her to know what the fuck she's doing and to fight her own battles. But this is now the second or maybe even third time in Iron Flame when Xaden puts her behind him. So it's when Xaden and Arik are fighting about Alec, Arik's older brother. Xaden literally, quote, hooks his fingers into my waistband and tugs me backwards, setting me slightly behind him. The hooks his fingers into her waistband is infuriating. That almost feels like a little leash of like, come here. Like, you know, and
See,
I'm
one of those people who like start to wander into the street accidentally. And my husband will do that very frequently to me, where he'll like hook my belt loop and like pull me back because I'm just starting to aimlessly wander. Like that happens very often.
Wait, you just at random just walk into the street? Why?
My feet just start moving. I don't know how to describe it. I just like, I'll be talking and I'll just start like wandering, or like, I don't know. I can't explain it.
Oh my God, that kills me. That's so funny. I'm learning so much about you today. So we have to cover Nasia, because yet again, Nasia is fucking asleep. I'm still here for the someone is drugging him idea. Now, maybe it's Cadet Samuelson, the lone first year scribe who just they walk into as they're doing their archives heist, or it's also Varish. But there's also been an argument on social media and on our YouTube comments about Nasia having narcolepsy. And considering Rebecca Yarros' representations of things like ADHD with Arlie in Fourth Wing, with chronic illness, obviously, with Violet, and a myriad of other things. So it definitely could be Nasia having narcolepsy as well. I just wanted to cover that being a possible theory.
I think that it is either that and being representative, but I do really think that it's him being drugged. I don't think that it's his fault. That is what it ultimately comes down to. I don't think he's just really bad at his job, as much as we might poke a little bit of fun at him, but I don't think he's bad at his job. I think that someone or something is causing him to be asleep on every occasion that we run into him. And I'm telling you, it's Jasenia. Like, I think it's her.
I do think that, like, if it was him just being bad at his job and just falling asleep, there might have been, like, one mention, maybe two. But we get, like, 5 in Iron Flame. And that's just classic Rebecca saying, hey, this is a thing that you should pay attention to, but I'm actually going to make you pay attention to this thing on the side.
We're watching you, Nasia. Oh, okay, going back to these little mysteries, another one that we can kind of close the book on is we learn more about Imogen's memory wiping signet. I'm going to step onto my high horse with Imogen here again.
It's been a while since we've had Lexi.
Been.
Yeah, I like this. I missed this.
Now, if you remember from our Fourth Wing deep dives, I loved the marked 1 second signet theory. I did a whole dissection on that theory with Imogen's mind-wiping ability being a secret from leadership and how she used it in Montserrat. But here, we learn that Imogen actually has a classified signet, and therefore it is known among leadership. It also seems like she has to touch the person whose short-term memory she wipes, which makes me question every possibility that we had in Fourth Wing about all those theories, that she used her signet way more than we ever thought, because I was under the impression she did not have to touch them, but she does actually touch someone's face here, and to me that is a representation of that she has to touch someone, very much like Dane does with his retrieving people's memories there. I'm still convinced though that her signet has been used more than we're aware of, but I was shocked that her signet did not come up more in Iron Flame. Like, why is it only being used in these super trivial moments? Yes, I love that we are seeing all of these signet powers kind of coming together, and it's not necessarily effective in big battle sequences, but come on.
I do wonder if it's like a can of worms that we don't want to open. Like, you know, with time travel, that can be like a really hard thing to write out of a story for authors. What if this is similar? Like, if she can just go around being like, your memory is wiped, your memory is wiped, your memory is wiped, like that does kind of present some difficulties in a writing style. So I do wonder if that is one of the reasons why it's not being brought up as much. Now, I don't think this is the last time by any means we're going to see Imogen's signet used. I love Imogen. I really hope she makes it out of this series alive. I don't think she's going to, which really sucks.
So either.
But I do want to know, before I go down that rabbit hole, because I might actually just weep into a microphone if Imogen dies. And even the speculation if Imogen dies, I might just cry. I do want to know how it is her signet works, though. Outside of the touching, more so like, can she see the memories and then wipe them? Is it a blind clean out? Like, she doesn't know what she's cleaning out. Can she change memories? Because like when the guards are down for the count because Xaden like knocks him out real quick, she wipes their memories, but then Xaden throws some wineskins on them. Is that her wiping their memories and altering it as like, you drunk fucks, you drank a little
I think it's because it's just blank. So that's a great question, is that she just like removes the memory. She doesn't replace it with anything, but she removes the memory. And my guess is that she's, again, short term. So she has to know what memory, again, we're going to talk about the Google search again. She types into the Google search and she has that, which by the way, we get verification is actually how Dane's signet works. I will definitely talk about that later on. But anyway, back to Imogen's signet. I think that, so she has to know what memory is being pulled out, and it's not, like, essentially it's like they were asleep or something like that. And that is where Xaden comes in with the wineskins. So it's like they wake up and they have wineskins there, and it's like, oh shit, like we drank and passed out. We're like, that's how I interpreted that. So that they had a reason to understand why they blacked out.
That would make sense. I have a lot of neurological questions on how that would work, but I'm going to save that for a different nerd deep dive. So as they're walking further into the archives, they leave Riddick, Sawyer, Quinn, and Rhee all behind. And Bodhi, I think he's there too. But Violet mentions how this is the farthest she's ever walked into the archives. They've been walking like 2, maybe max 5 minutes into this adventure. She really has not gone very deep into this place. And that was really kind of a surprise, I think. I also love how she's watching Jesinia and she's forcing her mannerisms, her posture, her pace to all match Jesinia's as they're walking through the archives. This is a fun fact for any of those who did not go to acting school. This is a class that we would literally do, would be adjusting our mannerisms, our posture, and copying other people, because that is something you do when you're taking on a character. And so, wow, did that line just take me back to many a classroom setting. But that was just, I love that little line and how intelligent Violet is to even just think about that. Now, Lexi, it is time for another round, and we're adjusting the game a little today. And it is it intrinsic powers or is it shadow abilities? So Xaden is saying how there's no one in this section of the archives that they're walking through. And Arik replies with a quote, "Your shadows tell you that?" Now, Xaden doesn't really answer him because they're not speaking. But is it his shadows that tell him if someone's walking around a corner? Or does he hear thoughts / feel thoughts around him?
I actually had this annotation in my book because I was wondering this as well. And then when I was writing out in the outline, I just kind of skipped over it because there was so much else. And of course you brought in. I trusted that you would. Because I was wondering that as well. I was like, is this his intrinsic ability? But I'm going to say shadows just because we don't fully know how his intrinsic powers work. We do know that there is some kind of proximity required, but I don't know if that's like, behind a corner or if he has to actually be able to like look them in the face, for instance. I feel like it's fitting that it's shadows. Like, it just makes sense. Like, he's been able to kind of hide in the shadows. Like, we can't forget how powerful his shadows really and truly are. And I think that his intrinsic ability makes us question how powerful his shadows really are. And I don't want to lose sight of how powerful they are. So I'm going to go with shadows in this instance here.
I was going to go with intrinsic, but you do make a really good point, because I do think that his shadows, there is a reason that they did not even question that he might have a second signet, because of how powerful his shadows are. I mean, we get this with Quinn in just a little bit, where she says her signet is extra powerful because of the fact that her dragon is her great aunt's dragon. So I think I am going to stick with intrinsic powers, because this seems to me like the same kind of powers he would have used in the very first section that we covered in chapter 2, when he's in the meeting and he's like, what about those kids outside? And they're like literally that in the doorway. I do think that that's more intrinsic powers and him just being able to feel, I'm going to say feel minds around him.
I think it could be either one, but I just feel like it's shadows. Like he's still our shadow daddy. We can't forget about that.
I love a shadow daddy.
As we're talking about magic here, one of my favorite things about Iron Flame in general that does have a leg up on Fourth Wing is all of the magic. This vault heist has so much magic just shining through the pages, and it's like, yes, this is a fantasy book. And you know what? I think like literally in this moment, I just decided that I like Iron Flame more than Fourth Wing because it includes so much more magic. Like I've been really seesawing between the two of them, and I've been kind of leaning towards Fourth Wing, but I think that just because of all of the magic that is in Iron Flame and all of the lore and world building and dragon politics, I think I might have to go with Iron Flame. Even if Jack does come back. I'm more mad about him defying all logic we ever knew about than I am about Xaden becoming a Venin. I know I am in the minority with that, but like I can't get over Jack fucking Barlow.
I'm not mad that Xaden becomes a Venin. Obviously, like as a Xaden lover, I am sad about it, but like in the lines of the story, I'm so excited to see where that goes.
Me too. But back to this part here. I love how the Royal Vault wards work and how our squad uses their signets, very similar to how they did it when they were breaking into Lilith's office. And you know, the archive protections, again, going back to those wards, and there's so much more power in this and how it just all comes together in this heist. I love how that happens. And there's a particular line that stands out when Violet is in the vault. Quote, "It's not just the wards. There's magic in this room," unquote. Magic in this room? I love it.
I am feral for there's magic in the air. Like, I'm pretty sure my nipples get hard when I read a line like that. Like, there's magic in the air. There's magic about, like, there's that line from Dumbledore, and maybe this is not something I should say in the same paragraph. There's that line from Dumbledore in the cave where it's like, there's old magic here, or something along those lines. Like, I fucking love that shit.
Me too.
I love it.
I was really thinking about how magic works in this world and how it would work in that similar context in this vault here. Because if magic is not wielded, it must be tempered into an object. We'll dive into runes and how power works with them in part 2. So does this mean that this vault is full of runes or magical objects, and that's why Violet feels all the magic in here? Maybe. Depends on how the runes are activated or how the power is stored. Or maybe there's like a feeling of magic in this room from the way that the wards uniquely work in there, where remnants of magic that emanate off bonded riders is like trapped in this vault. That would seem weird with it being the scribe quadrant, but you never know. Or maybe there's something working together between this vault's wards and the magical objects in it. I love that there's magic in the air when I'll say there's not really supposed to be in this kind of context. It makes me wonder even more about all of the things that are in this vault.
I love there's this line from Imogen when they're, around the room. Violet and Auric have entered the room. Imogen and Xaden are still outside. Imogen calls it uncomfortable shit, basically saying the wards or something like that is just feeling very uncomfortable, and even Violet comments on them feeling different in her monologue. But Auric says there's a hum, but it's not that bad. It does make me wonder about the wards that he's been around in the castles in Caldir, because I am certain he has been in many a situation with some strong ass magical wards.
I think in this instance here, it means that the wards, they don't feel so weird to him because he is of the royal blood. So he's like allowed to be in there while everyone else is considered trespassing. So I think that's how it doesn't feel so weird to him, but it does feel really weird for our other characters. It also makes me wonder about the ward's strength in Caldir, because it's not at, I'll call it the source of the wards like it is here at Bisgayth, which makes me wonder again about the archives. Like maybe that was strategically placed here for all of these warded magics. That's why it had to be at Bisgayth versus in Caldir, because the wards are just not able to be as strong there as they are at the source here at Bisgayth.
Fuck me. I love everything you just put down. Yes. So Auric bringing Violet into the wards. He does this by surprise. Violet was not expecting this to happen. Xaden almost loses his fucking shit. But Auric is like, yeah, of course I did this. Like, duh. What are your thoughts here? Is this a dick move? Is this Auric being smart and intelligent? What are your thoughts?
Smart for sure. He took a risk of bringing Violet in, but he also knows his father well enough that his father wants to show these treasures off. So it means that someone else would have to be allowed in. I think that he didn't mean for it to be a dick move, but he kind of just had to do it, because let's face it, Auric didn't know what he was looking for. Violet is absolutely the one who does. She's the one with the scribe instinct. She knows what she's looking for. And so, of course, she was needed in the vault to search for the journals as well. He never would have been able to find them on his own.
I'm going to go with a 50-50 split. I do think it was very smart because of all the reasons you just said. Yes, she is the one who knows what they're looking for. Also, they barely made it out with enough time, and that was with 2 people looking. Imagine if it was just one person. Now, I do think there was that added bonus of Xaden absolutely losing his fucking mind, and he was like, payback's a bitch, my friend, which I'm not gonna lie, kind of love. I love Auric for those reasons. I do wonder how often the King visits this room in the royal vaults. Because, did he come here when he was at Basgiath last reunification day? Does he just chill here often? Is it just kind of storage for him? Because there's like a table in there. Does that table come out for parties, or does that table live in there and that's where he has like super private meetings?
I think it's more of like I'll call it like a museum for him where he shows this off. And you know what I'm going to add to it now, because we know that Papa Sorrengail has seen these journals. So did King Tari bring Papa Sorrengail into this royal vault and show off these journals to him? I'm going to say yes, right?
I'm going to say yes,
yes.
Too. Yes, absolutely. So then that actually bears the question then, what kind of relationship did Papa Sorrengail and King Tari have? Like, were they buds? Were they research partners? But King Tari doesn't really give me research vibes. He's kind of an IDOT, so...
He is, but he also calls himself King Tari the Wise. So he is like considered this wise king, or at least perceives to be that.
I'm going to say that's like, I'm King Tari the Wise, and everyone's like, sure, King Tari. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that's more just him overcompensating for something. In a previous episode, we speculated on the possibility of the oldest prince, Haldan, getting killed, because we do think that Auric is going to end up on the throne by the end of this. And we said things like Mira, we said things like Auric himself. I was super about kinslaying. But lines like this from Violet to Xaden, and this is in their mind-to-mind speak, quote, then you'd be responsible for the deaths of 2 princes. I think that maybe Xaden, maybe in like a Venant, maybe him going mad, might kill the oldest prince, Haldan. Or Violet. I could see Violet doing it too.
While none of that would surprise me in the slightest, I feel like a more fitting person to kill Haldan would be someone like Dane or Sloane. I think Sloane would be a fantastic person to kill the prince to be the king. But you know who I'm really hoping is actually going to be the one to kill the king to be?
Fucking
Riddick.
Oh my God.
Maybe he surprises us all and takes down Navarre's heir. Like, I am so here for that.
You never cease to shock me, Lexi. You never cease to shock me. I don't know if I have a response to that. That would be cool. That's my response to that.
Is that that's a fun theory. Like
that's
what
I
like to say. Someone commented, they're like, that's the Southern version of bless your heart. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's so true.
Considering both of the sides of our family are from the South, we feel that on a spiritual level. That's so funny. As they're doing their big search for the books in the Royal Vault, I wanted to compile a list of all of the books that they pass through. We get a study of winged creatures, and man, I have some people on the internet who I think would really enjoy reading that book. A history of the island wards, which my obsession with the Isle Kingdoms, what I would not give to get my hands on this book.
Me too.
We have tomes that they find on the early wars. We have the history of the individual provinces. We have the mythology of the gods, which I immediately thought about the archive section on the gods that you did in Fourth Wing. And it's like, man, oh man, would Lexi have loved getting her hands on that book. We get a tome on mining practices, which, by the way, this is the earliest tome Violet has ever seen, which I've got some questions on that. And then we get a weather almanac, which feels like it's very out of place in this.
I am actually going to have a little something to say about that in our foreshadowing section.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Auric is trying to figure out where the heck they are trying to ward as he is doing his search. And he guesses Drathis because it is the most logical choice and it's close to both the Navarian border and to the sea. Which, why is warding the sea a good idea? That's my question.
Because he's looking out for the islands.
Because he's looking out for our Isle Kingdoms. I don't know. The Isle Kingdom seems like they like yeeted on out of Navarre and they're like, we're never talking to you again. But also for people who don't know where Drathis is, like me, I immediately took my book. And it is near Ressin and Athbean. It's basically in between Eratia and Corden. Remember, Corden is where Viscount Takaris is in part 2. But there are a lot of mentions of Drathis in this book. Just some fun facts that we get. Lexi's showing for YouTube.
Sorry, I'm trying.
It's like right in the crease on the book, so you have to like peel it open as much as possible. Man. Some quick fun facts about Drathis. It is Krovla's second most populous city. It is also where our team and Griffin Flyers start in the field to the west of Drathis, so it's a little outside of Drathis. But it's where the Griffin Flyers do their version of the parapet. And to put that into perspective, that's a fucking far way that they need to climb up the cliffs of Draelor to get to Eratia. If you look on your map, Drathis, like just west of Drathis, is like it's a ways to Eurasia. So I just thought that was fun, and I'm just on my geography bullshit today, apparently. I don't think, however, that all of the mentions of Drathis in the book, I don't think it really means much other than it's just close to Eurasia, but you never know. Now, I do wonder what happened to make the healers, the infantry, and the scribes make it so that they could not be generals in the army anymore. We learned that 200 years ago, Navarre made the change that only riders can command Navarian forces. What the fuck happened?
So I searched for any mention about the Second Crowlin Uprising, and while I didn't find any in Iron Flame, I did find just one comment about it in Fourth Wing. And friends, you are never going to believe what it's related to. Papa Sorrengail's research! I'm just going to quote this whole part because I am just on one today about Papa Sorrengail, his research, and how interconnected it is to everything. So Colonel Atos says, "We've had the scribes on it since threshing, and the only reference they can find in the archives about the power of Feathertails is hundreds of years old, which is funny because I remember your father doing a bit of research about the Second Crowlin Uprising, and he mentioned something about Feathertails, but we can't seem to find that tome." I have no idea if this is relevant, but something happened in the Second Crowlin Uprising that had to do with Feathertails and a shift in military power. Like, I don't know how it's all connected, but it is.
Well, what if that's the tome? Like, did they just find the tome in the archives heist? Like, he says, but we can't seem to find that tome. What if that was the tome that kicked off this conversation?
Oh my god!
We figured it out! Sorrengail's researches? No, because Violet knows where it is.
Yes, she knows where it is, so it would not be in here. But what if this tome was placed in here when Papa Sorrengail was looking at Warwick's journal? I think we just cracked something.
I think we just cracked a code. Holy shit.
I think we might have just cracked the code on where this missing tome was about the Second Crowlin Uprising that talked about Feathertails, and it is in the Royal Vault, where it also talks about the shift in military power structure. What if it has to do with the Feathertails giving their power over to someone, thinking about what Feathertails can do? And then where does Andarna come into all of this too? Because that's a whole other topic. Oh my gosh.
I am unwell.
I really sympathize for Violet and Arik here because searching for books can feel frustrating to say the least. And that is why we are so excited to partner with Book of the Month.
Book of the Month makes choosing books easy with carefully selected 5 to 7 new editions every single month, saving you from needing to search through book talk like your Arik and Violet in the Royal Archives.
And Book of the Month has begun offering audiobook options with your membership. So every month, choose one physical or audiobook from their list of featured books.
I've been deep in some heavy fantasy, and I needed a nice palate cleanser. So I just started my book, This Spells Love by Kate Robb, and it has really become such a fun read. It even has some light magic and, of course, some spicy romance, which is my cup of tea. I also love that Book of the Month prioritizes new authors, so it's a great way to support new up-and-coming authors. For example, like Kate's first book is This Spells Love. Yay, Kate!
So if you're looking for your next book, go to our link in the show notes or bookofthemonth.com and use code SWEATER, SWEATER, for the month of December to get your first book for only $5.
It is time to discuss the uber popular theory: is Arik going to become king? Oh, I just can't wait. Of course, I only go to Lion King. My answer is yes. Absolutely. He is going to be king.
Yes, like 1,000% yes. Moving on.
Just kidding. We'll actually talk a little bit more about that. Imogen says, quote, "You know no writer has ever been named king, right?" And classic Rebecca Yarros dropping that one sentence hint in something big that's happening, like an archives heist. So yes, I would bet much money that Arik is going to be king by the end of the series. But the plot thickens because Violet says that's not entirely true. More on this in a moment. But then fucking Arik interrupts her with, "If you're asking if I give a shit about being second in line, the answer is no. It's Halden's destiny to be king, not mine." This is so the reluctant leader trope coming into play. But what the heck was Violet going to say before he rudely interrupted her? Here's my question, Lexi. And this is where I get into my unhinged theory land. There was an ancient king mentioned earlier in this book that Violet helped Jacinia translate. Could this be the ancient king who lived thousands of years before Navarre existed? Now, thousands of years. Did they ride dragons thousands of years ago?
No, we are going to learn a lot more about that in today's archive section, actually. So the first 6 were the first riders to survive bonding with dragons. I love this idea of it being the ancient king, but I don't think it's that ancient king that we're thinking of, unless they consider, 600 years ago to be an ancient king, which maybe.
But it says thousands of years before Navarre existed, so I don't think it is the ancient king.
I don't think so either.
So then who the fuck would it be? Why was Violet like, that's not entirely true? Who's a dragon rider?
What if one of the first 6 ended up being a king? Because, no, that would have been way more common knowledge. I don't know, but that is a good question. When Violet says that's not entirely true and then gets interrupted, again, like that's just these little Easter eggs that are just little promises that we will get back to that at some time.
It's infuriating and I love this shit. I eat it up. I love it.
After Auric's hand gets all blistered in, really, there's nothing else like the Gringotts style heist as well. Very similar. There's a quick little line here that I want to note. Violet tells Ree to go to the infirmary and ask for Dyer, the healer from their land navigation trial Violet saved from getting roasted by Bade when he stared at the dragon. Violet says, he should keep quiet if you call in the debt he owes me. So just wanted to pull that out because, hey folks, that was the debt that she saved his life from Bade, and he was like being really like sweet, even though she's like, oh my God, this guy, like he's nice and all, but sheesh.
And now she's like, will you heal my blister-handed friend? Thanks.
And not tell anyone as Varystar's looking for people with blistered hands.
I love how she's like, let me call in that favor. The favor is literally something that could get your head on a spike. But thanks, my guy.
I mean, aren't most favors at Basgiath something related to getting your head on a spike, or at least getting roasted by a dragon? They don't actually chop people's heads off in the usual way.
No, that's far too inhumane. So we do need to talk about Quinn, because first, why is her signet not talked about 40,000 million times more? It is so badass. She can project. Lexi, she can project. Not just as one person, not just as herself anymore, but as multiple different people. If you remember last year during the squad battle, as a second year, Quinn could only project herself. But now someone's been practicing because she literally can project multiple people. She walked as Violet and Rhiannon, just in the courtyard or in the quadrant or whatever it was. What? That is so cool.
I agree. I love her signet. It is not talked about enough. And I'm saying that to us as much as I am to anyone else. So we haven't talked about it enough. Imagine how useful her signet is in so many instances. Like in a battle where she could distract the enemy by pretending to be somebody else while they actually get what they need done. Like getting injured people out while they're distracting the enemy, or in plenty of other heist things like this. There are so many ways that her signet can be useful, and I really hope that we see that more. Please don't kill Quinn. Which, by the way, fun fact, Quinn's dragon's name is Kruth, which means shape or form. That is so fitting for her dragon and her.
Love that. I can think of so many instances that Quinn's signet would be helpful. But we also get another big download in this moment that's just brushed away under the rug in a small breeze. This is so important, so I'm actually quoting the entire fucking thing. Quote, my signet is stronger because Kruth was my great aunt's dragon, but she's not a direct descendant, so I don't have to worry about going mad like those whose dragons bond in the direct familial line. Dragons aren't even supposed to get close to family lines for that exact reason, like they listen to human rules. I find the going mad stuff to be so ominous, and I don't like it.
But in my perspective, it's you either go mad or you get a second signet. So my guess here is that Quinn is not aware of the second signet part of it. And so when I first read this, I was like, oh my gosh, is Xaden's morally gray character, is he actually going mad? And that is the whole plot line where he is a completely unhinged person because of this that happened. But it's like, no, it's you either go mad or you have a second signet.
Now, here's the deal. When I read this for the first 3 times, I am on my 4th reread now doing this as a deep dive. I did not catch this. All 3 times I did not catch this. Wow. But this is major moment of foreshadowing. And because it is so big, I do want to put it in this section more so than our foreshadowing section, because we learn about this in more depth in the cave, like you're saying, with the you either go mad or you have a second signet. I want to reread that section because I want to make sure it is a strict or and not a and or. But also, at this point, Violet knows about Sigal's previous writer and that it was Xaden's grandfather. She knows that it was a direct familial line. Wouldn't her scribe brain go off and be like, oh, is my boyfriend gonna go mad? But she also might be flustered still because she just literally sprinted out of the archives.
That's my guess, is that she is just not in the right mindset to be fully comprehending what Quinn is saying. And it's not until her conversation with Sloane that the pieces all kind of start coming together there.
But also I need to point out that Xaden's here in this conversation. You would think he would be like, stop talking. Like, can you imagine what was going through his head in this moment?
Did not catch that at all. Like, I totally did not put two and two together that this conversation was happening and he was in the room at the same time. It's like, oh my gosh. Also, it's probably a good thing that Violet wasn't catching on to anything because Xaden was there, and I know that he said he wasn't going to read her thoughts or her intentions or whatever. But in that moment, it probably would have been a little tempting. And maybe that was a way of like him assuring himself that it's like, okay, like she's not on to me, so to speak.
If I'm being honest, if I had Xaden's signet, I'd do it. 100% I would do that.
Yeah. Just
Moral
a little
compass
check,
be
check.
damned.
So our crew, they succeeded. They got the 2 journals. Everyone is celebrating in their own ways or kind of continuing, making sure that, you know, this heist was a cover-up. And they passed the infirmary. And I feel like that's very important to note here, because what if Nolan was in there, or if Jack was in there? And that is what really flagged their presence, is that Violet and crew were, you know, up and out, and then this thing happens where there has been a disturbance in the royal vault, and so there's kind of like this high alert, and I just had to point that out, that they passed the infirmary, and I think that is important.
So I do know that Jack is out with a few people from First Wing, including Caroline Ashton. He's like out like traipsing in the courtyard because they like lock eyes for a second, and he like gives her like a solid nod, which is ominous. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely think Nolan was in there, and it's like, okay, put plan in action or something like that. Ugh, I can't wait to talk about Nolan, my favorite guy. That's heavy sarcasm, friends. I love that Violet is like, I'm so thirsty from sprinting to Xaden, and how convenient that Nolan offers her lemonade. I love how it's in there twice that Violet's really thirsty. And it makes sense. She just sprinted out of the archives. Of course she'd be thirsty. I still think she's an IDOT for taking lemonade from someone and not smelling it first, but whatever.
This is just it setting up so that when she does drink from what he offers, and she doesn't get chastised by readers like you, Nicole. This is all Rebecca setting it up so that Violet doesn't get decimated by people like you.
As I literally chastise her in this very moment. I will put that aside. I kind of get it. But I do love this line. Xaden pulls her into the alcove and they share a kiss that was, quote, hard and fast and ... happy. Wow. I think that is the first time that word has been used with these two. By the way, the word is happy. Hard and fast has definitely been used with these two many times. My freaking heart. The fact that it's like, oh, we're like so happy. And the second I read how just like elated she was, I said this in Battle Brief, she's practically skipping down the halls. I was like, something's about to go wrong. Like people are too happy, and it is the middle of the book.
And we're not quite there yet, but Nolan does make his appearance. And, quote, Nolan looks so damn tired, like he's just come from a major session or 12. Is this just from him working with Jack? Or I'm guessing it has to be multiple other people.
Lexi, it's Second Wing. He's working with Second Wing.
So it brings me to my next question is, why is this so new this year? We may have thought that Nolan was trying to mend Venom for far longer than Jack based on Chapter 66's epigraph in his lower rank that hints to it being some years ago, or at least some time ago. But Nolan was fine last year. He had no trouble mending Violet and other cadets. He was walking around. He wasn't acting like he was super tired. He clearly was not working on the same crazy stuff that he is right now. And so that makes me really wonder about the timeline with the Venom and being among them and how they're trying to mend these souls. And is Jack actually an anomaly? But he can't be because of the epigraph. I'm confused.
I'm equally confused. And that's a really good point. I truly don't know. Speaking of Jack, there is this line from Nolan. He says, quote, "I was getting some lemonade when Jack told me he saw you out here." I miss this line on every single one of my... Apparently, I just didn't read this chapter on all of my rereads.
I think that you need to just read the book instead of listen to the book, Nicole.
It's true. We do catch a lot more. Here's the issue, though. If I sat down and just actually read a book, it would take me 45,000 times longer because I am such a slow reader. And it's just... I like to multitask. I like to read my books and color, or read my books and cook dinner. And by read, I mean listen. But why did Jack say he saw her out here? Earlier, literally in this episode, I speculated if Jack was being controlled by leadership, and that's why he's being so damn nice. I will say this moment cements it for me that he is being controlled by leadership right now, because if he saw Violet out and about and he's being controlled by leadership, especially if Violet is looking sus, of course he would go to Varish and Nolan and tattletale. He literally saved her a few chapters ago. Maybe he saved her because he's under control of Varish, and Varish wants to know what sus shit she's up to, and he doesn't want her to die by gravity. I don't know. But leadership might have him tailing Violet of some sort. This all just seems sus.
Or Jack was going to be going to Nolan anyway because he has to go to the infirmary.
But Nolan... This is just a bad look for our guy, Nolan. He says, quote, "I never like to see you hurt, but I can't protect you from the consequences of your own actions when you risk the safety of every civilian in this kingdom." Well, woof. I guess this gives us a nudge of which side of the war he's on.
We've talked about this quite a bit in previous episodes, and I think he's a good guy who is in a really bad situation here.
Now, someone on, I can't remember if it was YouTube, TikTok, or D all of the above, but they mentioned, where the fuck is Winifred? Because Winifred is Nolan's wife, and she's not in this book. So do they have her as the blackmail to make Nolan keep going?
I think she's just not in the book because she's a healer, and so anything that she would be able to help with, at least in a prominent way, isn't there as much as it is with writers when they're countering these venom. I don't think that he's being blackmailed. I don't. I think that he's a little bit more gray than that.
Interesting. Okay. That's fair. Lexi, it is time to move into our foreshadowing section. These are all the little moments of foreshadowing that we did not mention in our key insights. And this is not such a little moment. I'm just going to say all the Viscount Takara stuff. Everything. That is foreshadowing.
Xaden has had 2 chances to acquire the Luminary, and both times he's had what Takaris asks for. So the first time was Xaden's hand in marriage. Kat and him were betrothed, and the Luminary was supposed to be part of the deal. Second time, Takaris wanted Violet to wield lightning, and Xaden wouldn't risk her safety by taking her there.
While flying away from the rendezvous, Violet feels an ugly twist of irrational, jealous, anxiety, and insecurity. This is only the beginning of her illogical emotions around those two. I'm going to say mainly logical. I am not a jealous person, but I'm not going to lie. If someone was looking at Brett the way that Kat looks at Xaden and is as catty as she is and as crazy as she is, I wouldn't feel so good. So I'm not going to lie. I don't think it's entirely illogical. Which, of course, Kat seizes upon these emotions and later uses her mind work to heighten those emotions like crazy. Poor Violet feels like she's going cuckoo banana pants.
Violet confidently tells Xaden that if she can get her hands on the signet blocking elixir, she or Brennan can probably figure out an antidote. And I think that this antidote will be more important in future books, especially if it has anything to do with venom and controlling them, maybe. But remember that Violet's mom even gives her the antidote to take, but she doesn't save any to examine further. She was a little preoccupied with everything else going on and, getting tortured for almost a week.
Violet specifically not asking Xaden about what Dane said on the mat and all about her mother carving lines into her basically boyfriend's back. Not only will this and others be the questions that Violet avoids asking throughout the book to avoid disrupting their happiness and their peace in their relationship, but Xaden will also bring this up in the famous "What's your second signet?" scene. I'm feral to cover that chapter. I cannot fucking wait.
I can't wait for that part. Oh man. We get another Isle Kingdoms mention. At this point, we just really should have started a tally. We are going there for sure. Sawyer says, if it means we get to spend time in the archives, I'm in. And we all know why, my friend. Riddick grins and claps him on the back. We learn later that Sawyer has the hots for Jasenia.
I'm very curious as to when on Earth Sawyer would have met her, but I don't care. I ship it. I ship it hard. When Xaden is learning about who all knows about the venin, Violet says to him, quote, "It doesn't look like you're sweating to me," to which Xaden replies, "You have no idea what I'm thinking," to which Violet replies, "You're right, I don't, so tell me." Little lines like this are just so juicy after the intrinsic download in chapter 56.
Violet says that the truth is coming out. It's just a matter of time, all about the venin and everything. And in fact, less than 1 week, the truth all comes out.
We get another Isle Kingdoms mention. You know what? Fuck a tally. I want this to be a drinking game going forward. This is just ridiculous. Violet is starting to panic, and she looks at all the collections of books, this is in the archive heist, that pertains to the Isle Kingdoms. Good Lord, we have to be going there in book 3.
This may be nothing, but it's been mentioned enough on the internet, so I have to bring it up. While in the Royal Vault, Violet comes across a weather almanac. Nicole pointed this out earlier. And in the moment, it's not a big deal. This tome might not be anything, but there is so much focus on weather throughout this book. We know the reason why Orisha gets hotter. It's because the dragons are present. More dragons in any area, the hotter the atmosphere. Rebecca confirmed this in an interview. Even with that knowledge, I feel like weather is mentioned throughout this book, including with this weather almanac tome, simply too often to just be referring to the weather. Like, seriously, why is a weather almanac in the Royal Vault? We could ask that question about a lot of the books that we saw in there, but I feel like there's a lot more to weather, and especially as it plays in with some of our characters' signets, like, there's more to it. I don't think that there's any crazy theories along with it, but I'm really excited to see the role that it might play in the future.
Don't tempt book talk with a good time. We can come up with some crack theories that'll rock ya. I can't wait. Violet tells Xaden that Brennan should be able to translate Warwick's journal from Old Lucerish. Let's just say that it is a good thing that Violet and Dane, I can't believe I'm saying this, end up in Erasia, because Papa Zorengale never taught Brennan Old Lucerish, only Tirish. Which, is this a clue about what Papa Zorengale was trying to teach only Violet if he knew about these journals? Does this have anything to do with when Andarna was staying silent when Violet was talking to Taryn about her dad's research? This Papa Zorengale's research, it's going to be the key of the whole book. I'm calling it. I know. Now let's step into the archives, where each episode Lexi educates us on a prominent world-building topic from this stretch of chapters. I am so excited for this one. I cannot wait.
So today's archives topic overwhelmingly won with the Patreon Dragon Writers vote. So let's talk about the first 6 and the Great War. To kick it off, who were the first 6? The first 6 were initially desperate to save their people when they approached the dragon dens more than 600 years ago. We'll get to why they needed to save their people in a minute. These dragons bonded the first 6 and made them riders. Interestingly, these first 6 were not the first to actually become riders. They were simply the first to survive. My assumption is that humans had tried riding dragons throughout history. Hey, maybe that ancient king tried to ride a dragon. I don't know that. But these first 6 and the times that they were living in were different. And maybe the dragons helped make sure they survived, unlike dragons in the past, because the dragons needed wards from these bonded humans. Speaking of which, let it be known, dragons bonded humans only to protect their hatching grounds from venin, who were the bigger threat during this Great War and beyond. After all, dragons cannot weave wards or runes. Only humans who are bonded can. More than 600 years later, both species continue to use the other for their own gain. They have a mutually beneficial relationship. That is to say, both dragons and humans still have their own secrets and their own agendas, but they really do need each other for protection and survival. Hence why we have the system that we have today with dragons and riders. We only know of 2 of the first 6's names, at least as of right now. Warwick of Lucerys, his native language was Old Lucerish, which his journal was written in. Now, he did lie about how to establish wards in his journal, so the wards could not be recreated. Warwick never wanted anyone else to hold the power of the wards, intending for Navarre to always have the upper hand. His lie was that there were 6 dragons, but of course there were actually 7. The other of the first 6 that we know of is Lyra of Moraine. She, unlike Warwick, wanted the information about creating wards to be shared. She was alone in thinking that the protection and knowledge of the wards should benefit more than just Navarre. And in in her words, it cost her everything. Her native language was Moranian, so of course her journal was written in Moranian as well. The only other information we know about the first 6 is that they had complex interpersonal relationships. I really hope that we learn more about this in later books. I don't know if we will, but maybe. And that they fought multiple battles in the Great War. Speaking of which, let's move on to the Great War. It occurred 600 years ago, about the same time, and ultimately the reason why the first 6 bonded dragons. The enemy of the first 6 in this Great War was General Darmor, while Navarre and assumably Pormiel's allies were the Isle Kingdoms. The Isle Kingdoms helped win the war. However, Navarre cut them off when they put their wards up, and nobody's been allowed to travel there for hundreds of years. General Darmor ruined the Barrens region, causing all dragons to abandon the land. The Barrens is sucked dry of magic and life, leaving it a dry, desert-covered peninsula in the southeast part of the continent. Consider it Venin territory these days. Now, in the mountains of the Steel Ridge Range, the green dragons offered their ancestral hatching grounds to be the ward source for the good of dragonkind. Wards of Navarre were woven by the first 6 at what is now Basgiath War College. This location was chosen because these green dragons have an especially stable connection to magic, thanks to their more reasonable defensive nature, so it was only reasonable for their hatching grounds to be the location of the wardstone. The first 6 didn't just establish the wards, but they personally carved the first wardstone. Emphasis on first wardstone, meaning they probably carved at least one other, such as the wardstone in Orisha, or maybe even a third one somewhere else, like Nicole and I were speculating earlier. Now, we'll go into unification in a later episode's archives, but for now, the Great War is what led these first 6 to bond with dragons. Being bonded to dragons enabled them to establish the wards. However, it's my current understanding that the unification occurred after the Great War. The wards were most likely active, and Pormiel had 1 year to come across the border and therefore cross into the protection of the wards before everything was closed off to eliminate further exposure and danger. But back to the Great War. Some kind of weapon killed off the Venin during this Great War, and I believe that we can safely assume this is what ended the Great War. Maybe combined with the wards being in place. Like, again, the timeline is a little bit iffy, but I'm guessing that it went wards, end of Great War, and then unification. But what? This weapon? I wish that I had more that I could tell you about this weapon, because it is super mysterious. That was literally one tiny little half line that we got out of it, and it just breaks my heart to not be able to expand on the facts about this weapon in the archives. One more thing to note about all of this between the first 6 and the Great War and the end of it, there is a book in the Orisha Library that has an accounting of the first emergence of Venin after the Great War. At least that's what Violet thinks the book is about. It's very clear in the narration that she just thinks that's what it's about, which seems a little ominous, and another one of those little promises that maybe we'll learn more. There's some very ambiguous information around the end of the Great War, this weapon, and Venin. And again, which to me, they're all just promises that we'll learn more about this in later books, and specifically that timeline and how it all played out these 600 years ago.
I do not think it is an accident that Andarna is technically 600 plus years old, and there was a weapon that helped kill off the Venin 600 years ago. That is one popular TikTok theory right now. But Lexi, let us close out the episode by taking flight with our favorite moments.
I think today's favorite moment section is just going to be us reading Terran lines because they're like extra good and sassy in this stretch. So to kick it off, Sigale would never be taken down by something as puny as a griffin.
Violet being an emotional inconvenience to Taryn, but then him coming back with saying, "You're currently a prize annoyance." I just love this shit. I'm gonna start using that. You are a prize annoyance in my life. Not you, Lexi. You're a delight in my life. But there's some people I could definitely use that word with. More Taryn lines. Next time you fly, and I'll ride. And then, of course, Sassy Violet comes into play, and she says, "I would, but that would just inflate his ego."
Even more Taryn lines. You were selected by 2 dragons. Pull yourself together. It's like that pep talk we've all needed at some point. I love it.
Oh, like Life Coach Charon came out hard in this stretch of chapters, and he will come out even harder in part 2, and I can't even wait. He also says, quote, "And at one point you thought gruel was a satisfactory meal until you grew some teeth and found the rest of the world's food waiting." Such a good analogy, my guy. I love it. Taryn and Sigale's tail swishing in rhythm just also made me smile. I love that. And then Xaden says, me? Argue with you about books? I only pick fights I can win.
Riddick and Sawyer trying to listen at Violet's door, with Xaden catching them and saying, it's soundproof when the door is closed, assholes. Like, he really is just a peach with anyone who isn't Violet or a marked one, huh? When Xaden is looking at Violet, who's in awe of the hidden passage to the vaults, and says, I feel like I'm looking at what could have been, and then he says, you look better in black. Just always love these parallels of the scribe life Violet would have had versus the life that she ultimately chooses as a writer.
I love the quote, I peek through the archway and see Xaden in full fuck you mode.
After successfully retrieving the journals from the royal vault, Violet feels hope coursing through her veins instead of dread. This is one of those moments that so many of us can relate to in some way, shape, or form. This is one of those moments that so many of us can relate to in some way, shape, or form. Like, I know that I've personally felt this way recently with Fantasy Fangirls, and it just feels so good. Like, the pit in your stomach, it's gone, and you just feel lighter, and you can't help but smile at what you're accomplishing.
I also feel that way with Fantasy Fangirls, and it makes me so happy. It makes me really happy. We love you all.
And what a wonderful way for us to wrap up today's episode on that note. Next episode, we will wrap up part 1 of Iron Flame with the infamous chapters 35 and 36.
Friendly reminder, friends, that next Monday is Christmas, so we will be releasing episode 6, covering chapters 35 and 36, on Wednesday, December 27th, so that we can all spend time with our loved ones this holiday season. As always, thank you to our executive producer, Hayden, aka our sanity manager. We love you.
And be sure to join the Patreon party. The link is in our show notes or YouTube captions. It helps us so much, really and truly. It's huge in supporting us as we continue on this journey and making this a full-time thing. Also, please be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasy Fangirls Pod if you are not already. There is so much extra on social media. Please be sure to join the party over there too.
Also, do not forget that we are doing our 1 million downloads giveaway right now. All the links to that and the directions are in the show notes. Then, of course, do not forget to rate and review this podcast. You all have been amazing at rating and reviewing the show. It is so helpful with getting the word out there and getting us up the charts for more people to discover the show. And hey, speaking of more people discovering the show, do not forget to share with your fellow Iron Flame friends. We know a lot of book clubs are covering this book right now. And hey, a lot of you are studying by driving to these book clubs and listening to Fantasy Fangirls. Why not share the love with your fellow book club members?
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We love you all. Bye.
Bye. We are hosts, Lexi and I are hosting. Spit. I'm very spitty this morning again. No. Do you like my Professor Kaori sneak?
Yeah.
There's something stuck in my tooth. Hold on. I tried to speak and nothing came out. Let's try that again. Hold on. I still have a thing in my top tooth. Why is it stuck in there?
I can't see anything. I don't know, but
that's a shadow in my mouth. That's a shadow. Keep talking.
Okay. Hold on. I lost my place again.
Once an episode. It has to happen at least once an episode. Side note, we just got a text from Michael and he's on Akatar.